Okay, folks, welcome to the latest edition of the American Praetorians live stream slash Slack Ops. We're still sorting out which it is. We all know Mike's vote, but Mike is having technical difficulties at the moment, so he'll be joining us momentarily.
In the meantime, I'm Coop.
And we also have Bane author, Army warrant officer, though he's a pogue, so I'll try to forgive him that. And SPOTREPS contributor, Brad Torgerson.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
I like how you had to get the knife hand in there, too. So.
They issue you to that at Warrant Officer Candidate School, you know.
No, well, I was like, you know that saying? It's like when you point the finger at somebody, there's four pointed back at you, and it was like, I've only ever had the knife hand pointed at me. That's
all five of them are pointed at you.
Yeah.
I also picked up the habit of, the zero with the line through it diagonally. That's
oh yeah, you got to do that.
That's very valuable. They teach you that in Candidate School. Very valuable. All that gets me now with my messy handwriting is this the letter 8? Oh no, that's a 0. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Doctors and warrant officers all go to the same literacy school.
But yes, good evening, everybody. Oh, here's Mike.
All right, tell me this fucking thing is working now.
It did,
we
but
can
you don't
hear
have
you
to
and
come
we
in
can
all
see you.
hostile like that.
We can hear you and see you, yes.
Yes.
Can you see and hear us?
Yes.
He seems very disappointed about that.
Well, I'm looking at Brad now. Brad, why are you so terrible? The people want to know.
The scoundrel, the sinful,
Don't flatter
terrible,
yourself. Just
the
answer
terrible
the
person who ruined science fiction forever. Yes, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of science fiction crimes.
You're guilty. We just need to find out of what.
Doesn't the crime keep changing month by month, depending
Correct.
on who's screeching?
Correct. There's a lot of haters. I think you guys had Larry on earlier. I'm sure he has 10 times the number that I do.
Oh, Larry definitely hates you.
Well, he has good reason to. He's known me for 12 years, right? Anybody that knows me long enough probably gets tired of me after a while.
You know all his secrets.
Correct. I know where the bodies are buried. That's right.
He had to get a new property just to not have that hanging over his head.
Yeah.
All the old bodies are safely buried on the old property.
No,
Mike, how are you doing?
Ask
I guess
again.
it's not working anymore.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
I was asking Mike how he was doing. Now he's calmed down from the technical difficulty.
Fantastic. Keep going.
You look so happy, Mike. You look so thrilled on a Friday night. So full of
we're
energy.
not happy until he's not happy. So.
Yeah.
Well, should I do the song and dance of introducing myself formally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
we already know who you are. So
correct. So for people watching, my name is Brad Torgerson. I've been publishing science fiction and fantasy for about 13 years. I've been in the Army Reserve for about 21. Some of that active, some of that not. Have been deployed a couple times. Pete's right. I'm a POG through and through. I am a Chief Warrant Officer, newly promoted to Chief Warrant Officer 4. Chief Warrant Officer, thank you very much. But I'm a 420 Alpha, which in Army terms just means I sit at a desk and click a mouse all day. And if you anger me, I will make sure that you don't get paid, and then you will scream and shout and come pleading to me to pay you. And then I might think about paying you if you're nice and bring offerings. In the fiction world, I've won a few awards. Definitely published with Bane. Published also with Analog Magazine. I need to actually send some more new work, to be honest. It's been a hot minute since they published one of my stories.
Now,
Almost
Brad,
all of it science fiction.
right there. We stop right there. We have some younger viewers in the audience. Please explain to them what a magazine is.
Okay, there's this magic thing called a magazine. And
I thought it was called a clip.
You put right, exactly. And you open the pages, and it has pages, and inside the pages there's words, and sometimes there's pretty pictures. Sometimes you even get a pretty picture on the front. As far as the fiction goes, mostly science fiction. A lot of it, I guess, hard science fiction. I've kind of cut my teeth patterning myself after Larry Niven. I was very, very fortunate to actually publish in his Manx in Wars universe. That was a great hoot, doing not only hard science fiction, but also military hard science fiction in a very well-known setting. And yeah, I've known each of you in turn for years. I think I met Mike through Larry. I think I met Pete through Larry. Coop, I knew you on Facebook before I knew you anywhere else. It's just kind of naturally aggregated that
Yeah.
the three of you got glued together in this podcast, of course. And I've watched the podcast before. When you
Yeah, I
guys
went viral a couple of times, and then they got circled back into our little circles of
Yeah.
I don't want to say influence because that's cringe, but of
Very
people we
cringe.
talk to.
right.
Also, this is not technically a podcast.
It's just a conversation.
Yeah, I don't think either of us have any Apple products, so if we can.
But
Thank goodness.
You do?
it's not on like we don't actually have it up on like where you can download the audio. We should probably do that. People might like that.
We've
Yeah,
been
Jack
told by
Wilder keeps
smarter people
talking
than
about
us to do that.
Well, they can always watch you on YouTube, right? These are stored to YouTube, I think.
Yep.
They are.
Yeah. So I mean,
I should probably get back to uploading them to Rumble too eventually. But
I listen to 99% of the podcasts I listen to on YouTube. So, as far as I'm concerned, YouTube is the place to go to find podcasts. So, I think that works.
It's funny because Apple doesn't actually make a product called a pod, anything pod anymore. They stopped the iPod.
Well, they will when they get into real estate. So.
The Life Pod.
Oh yeah. Hey, Brad, we can make that on topic. How do you feel about like us slowly turning into like some shitty dystopia from a sci-fi, short story or like Twilight Zone or something like that, where it's like it's actually coming true, but in the dumbest ways possible?
And also without the aesthetic. Like it's not like 70s sci-fi dystopia. Nobody's wearing beige. It's
Very disappointing, right?
You haven't
Very
seen me
disappointing.
on a Saturday night.
Flat Dark Earth and Coyote Brown don't count.
None of the cool parts of any of the dystopias we wanted, and yeah, it's pretty stupid and disappointing. I'll tell you this: my dad and I talk all the time. He's of the Vietnam generation, although he was not a Vietnam veteran. He was in the military briefly, Air Force, but both of us
pick one. I mean, come on.
cannot. Both of us cannot believe how much like nobody trusts any of the institutions anymore, like any of them. Me and the guys at the office talk about this. I work with senior people. They're all E8s. They've been deployed a few times, different places throughout the GWAT, and everybody is very, very cynical about certainly the Pentagon leadership, and is incredibly cynical about the Washington, D.C. leadership, and even just ordinary stuff that you wouldn't think twice about, like the CDC. Like, who would have guessed even 5 years ago that we would all distrust and deeply hate the CDC, right? Like, when I was a kid, the CDC was the most harmless thing you could imagine. It was like, oh yeah, they're just, they'll tell us when to, get our boosters, and it's vaccines, and it's just, keep your kids healthy so they don't get the croup and they don't get mumps, and nobody thought about it. And now, after what's happened over the past 3 years, like, is anybody bothering to get a booster who doesn't trust any of this stuff? I mean, and I'm not saying I'm an anti-vax guy, because I'm really not. I think the science of the vaccine is sound. Where I was extremely and deeply troubled and remain deeply troubled was seemingly the rush by many municipal, state, and federal officials to immediately go for the lockdown, to immediately go for the you can't do this, you can't do that, you must do this, you must do that, including the military. There's still several hundred guys, and I guess a few women in there too, who all lost their careers because they were discharged because of the mandate. That has since been lifted, but those people have not been reinstated. They should be reinstated with full back pay. They haven't been and probably won't be, because I don't know who's advocating for them. I don't know if anybody is advocating for them. So yeah, this future that we live in 2023, like if someone would have said, yeah, this is the America you're going to live in when you're turning 50. If they had said that to me when I was 18, back in 92, I would have been like, really? Really? That's the future. Because, back in 92, we all thought it was going to be way cooler than it is, way edgier than it is. We thought we were going to have, we were going to be able to jack in, right? It was going to be Johnny Mnemonic, and we were be plugging into our skulls and chasing around in cyberspace. And
A lot
instead,
more
it's
leather and neon, right? I mean,
exactly much more leather and neon. Right. I'm very disappointed.
we
I
just need to
can't-
bring back cassettes. If we just retool technology to accept cassette saving discs,
The,
Cassettes and CRT monitors.
yeah.
yeah,
I gotta miss. I miss cassettes. I really
the
do.
timeless media of magnetic tape.
Yeah.
Return with a V.
Well, I used to do. I was talking about this on Twitter today. So back in the olden times, in '92, I got involved with a little community radio station here in Salt Lake City. And back in those days, you had vinyl, you had reel to reel, which is the old, full size tape, and you had cassette tape, and you had the cart machines doing your little promos and stuff in between the music. Um, it was the crossroads of a lot of technology before everything went digital. And I'm kind of glad I got to experience that because there was it was like WKRP. Who remembers WKRP in Cincinnati? Fewer and fewer people every day, probably, but I remember it. And it was kind of fun to experience radio when it was still a little bit like WKRP, especially at a community station. Because
Who remembers Cincinnati?
Everyone knows the turkey drop, though. Everyone still remembers, even if they only know it because of a meme. They know the turkey drop.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
I think most people only know of it because of the meme.
right? Yeah, a lot
Probably
of
more people know about Cincinnati because of the meme.
I'm sorry, we were talking about cyberpunk. I'm bringing it back.
He is. He looks like Agent K from Blade Runner. Legit. Nice. I like it.
You could actually pull that off too.
Yeah, I'm not doing the sunglasses though.
I still say you look like Critical Drinker's cousin from America. I think that is a legit comparison right there.
I mean,
There's a bastard cousin thing going on between you and Critical Drinker. I'm convinced of it.
I think it's the hairline.
Now, if we really wanted this to blow up, we'd have to find some way to get the Critical Drinker on here.
Yeah, I was
man,
saying, hey,
there
you
you
write books. Why don't you talk about them?
It's interesting. Him and who's the other one that actually writes books? And he's collaborating with George Alexopoulos.
Razor Fist.
Razor Fist. That's right. Yeah, a lot of these guys are closet novelists or not so closet novelists. Yeah. It's fascinating to find the crossover there.
Everybody wants to be a writer. I know. Trust me, I know a lot of writers.
Until they learn how the business works, and they're just like, oh, that's like a bag of groceries every quarter.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the thing that even like I've had to explain this to people in my extended family, especially the ones that got all excited about the book that won the Dragon Award back in 2019, which I was very proud of, and I thought that was pretty cool. But
As you should be.
it didn't rake in the millions. Almost nobody in this business is raking in the millions. But people look at you like you are because they're like, "Hey, you wrote a book and it won an award. Oh, woo, woo, you must be made of money." And it's like, no, unfortunately, I'm not made of money. That's why I'm still plugging away at the office in uniform every day.
Well,
Yep.
if you had a successful TikTok channel, then you would rake in all the money.
Apparently
You also
so.
need to have a billionaire family that's willing to mass advertise that shit.
That would help.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
And a trust fund so that you could do nothing but make new episodes every single day for years and years until
Yeah.
your audience grew enough that it actually supported itself.
Oh,
Right.
I love the trend on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff where it's parenting advice from other new parents in their big swanky house and that stuff. And it's like, You're raising like 3-year-olds. You don't know how this ends up. I wouldn't be taking your your parenting advice just yet. It might be good, it might be not, but we'll have to find out in 15 years.
Let's talk to someone who has a 24-year-old with a successful career.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. No, that's no joke.
Who
Yeah,
has
that's
not
no joke.
been to prison and addicted to half a dozen different things and already divorced at 24.
Oh well, I'm fucked. So
Oh, shoot! Now I just lost it. Occupational hazard of turning 50 next year. Damn it! What was I going to say?
I'm not that old.
Honestly, can't. Honestly, can't remember.
Well, let's go back to my list of questions, though, Brad.
Okay. All right. Hit me.
You are our most controversial guest yet because everybody fucking hates you. Like, you get more hate than anybody I know, including Larry. You have more dedicated stalkers than Larry.
This is the most passive aggressive episode we've done.
Believe it or not, you have stalkers that just cling to you like they don't cling to Larry for some reason. I don't know why.
That's because I'm too stupid. I don't block them the way Larry does. Larry aggressively blocks them. Once
Yeah,
they
I was going to say, it's probably because you try and engage them in
Yes.
good faith,
That's-
whereas everybody else just like, fuck off, nerd, and then
Exactly.
you're
That's
like,
exactly.
how can I help you along your journey in life? And be like,
Yeah, you need to embrace the power of fuck off, nerd.
yeah.
Brad.
I'm too stupid is not the answer I was expecting, but we'll take it. You heard it here first, folks.
Well, I'm a warrant officer. I mean, we're limited. You got to remember, we're very limited people.
Now, the next question, of course, is what's your deal? Like this whole, all of it. What's going on with that?
My deal?
Your deal. What's your deal?
Okay. Just trying to eke out a living until, I die, maybe?
Wow,
Maybe that suffices. I
The
mean,
nerve.
aren't we all doing that?
dating. It sounds a little evasive there. What are you?
No, the people online. I see. So my wife is forever chastising me about bickering with people online. She herself is a curmudgeon about social media. She only uses Facebook very sparingly, and only in a positive manner with people she actually knows in real life. She's very down on how much arguing I've gotten into over the years. Although she does understand the root of sad puppies. She was there for all that mess a few years ago, and why it went down the way it did. But she still rolls her eyes at how much time I spend on Facebook and Twitter arguing in good faith with people who probably don't deserve it. Kevin J. Anderson, who is one of my mentors, years ago at his workshop in Colorado, tried to stage it was like an intervention. We were at dinner, and suddenly like him and a couple of the other authors just kind of turned to face me, and they're like, "You have a problem. We need to talk to you about your problem. You
You're
really
too
need to
nice.
fix this problem."
Keep
Well, no,
talking
they were
to
like,
people.
you're too controversial. You make people mad. You're upsetting people. You need to
Like
stop.
I said, you're too nice. That'll
People
do it.
don't like
these days.
nice. That's a
Yeah.
problem.
I think I pulled off maybe 6 months of kind of keeping quiet, and then I just couldn't. Things were too crazy, and people were too stupid, and I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I started arguing again.
That's a real problem. That's
I like how you say it like you're an AA for Arguers Anonymous or
I
something.
am. It's
It's
true.
just like fell off the wagon after 6 months, and I had to
I
talk
couldn't
to
do it.
people again.
Yes, I did. I fell off the wagon. I just couldn't do it. I'm back to step one, and I don't know if I'll ever get to step two again.
that's why I got a chuckle when certain members of your haters fan club, and all your haters hate each other too. It's not like it's all the same group. It's from across the spectrum. It's
Right.
impressive, right?
Well, they're on
Right,
the spectrum, that's for sure.
But some of them were like attacking your religion because, like a lot of people I know, Brad is Mormon. I lived in Utah for 9 years. I couldn't swing a dead cat without covering a Mormon in dead cat juice, right? And
Is that why you don't live in Utah anymore? Because you kept throwing dead cats at people?
they asked me,
Like, look, you have to leave politely. We'll just.
yeah, they gave me a casserole, told me to get the heck out. Apparently they don't abide swinging dead animals around there. Fascists.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, I see. Unbeknownst to me on Twitter, especially, the anti-Mormon crowd is incredibly active, and you can't seemingly say anything positive about your religion or your religious experience without them crawling all over you. And once they're crawling all over me, of course, I'm not inclined to just go, "Oh, sorry, I offended you. I won't say
Well,
anything."
that's what I was saying. Is like that. It's funny they're attacking you over that because you will argue until the end of time with them about it, just happily, I think. And B, so will almost every Mormon because that's your guys' whole jam.
Well, that and writing books. I mean,
that, I mean,
Kevin J. Anderson, Larry Correa, Brad
there were
Torgerson.
when I was in
Brad Book.
Afghanistan. My flight was based in Utah, so we had a few members of the church there, and they got into a theological discussion with some mainline Protestants of some stripe or another, and they got out the Bibles. There was a Bible bash going on, and I left. I was out of my depth, but it went on well into the night. So
That sounds like the guys. Yeah, it's funny because I'm a bit of a. It's strange because I would never describe. I'm going to use some lingo here, and I apologize. Mike will recognize some of this, Pete, and Coop may not. I've never been a Peter Priesthood, which is basically the Mormon version of the Goody Two Shoes, who does everything exactly by the book, never curses, never swears, never looks at big titties in Playboy magazine.
Oh yeah, if this
never
coffee
says
is triggering you, let me know.
Right. Yeah. So, I've never been Mr. Squeaky Clean LDS guy. My trajectory was born and raised in Utah, and just kind of took it for granted and coasted through it as a young man, as a teen. Had fairly kind of fallen away and become inactive in daily mentality, I guess. I never got wild and crazy, never got anybody pregnant, was never in trouble with the law or any of that jazz. But
no wonder everybody hates you.
I just wasn't really practicing and genuinely wasn't interested. But then I met Annie, that's my wife. Before she became my wife, I met her through the radio station that I talked about earlier. And she was a new convert and was completely different from anyone in the church that I had ever experienced before in my life. She was vivacious and fun and irreverent and baughty and could tell a off-color joke, and we'd all laugh.
You're not putting on a good sales pitch for the church, bro.
Well, it's important to understand there's the church, and then there's the culture. At least in Utah, there's the culture. And my wife and I have talked about this a lot because she's not from here. She's not born and raised in Utah, was not born and raised in the church. And there's a lot of ways that the culture transposes over the top of the church in unfortunate and often simply incorrect ways, but people insist that is what it is, and you end up with a lot of one of my LDS friends who lived here his whole life. He used to call it "utarded." He said, "Man, that's utarded," and I thought that was the perfect way to describe it. Is just kind of the culture here sometimes can crawl up its own ass over something stupid, where you're just like, really, this is the thing? Oh, that's so dumb, and that doesn't even have any basis in like an important piece of the doctrine. But because it's cultural, and people are so hot and bothered about it, they will, they'll be obnoxious to themselves. They'll be obnoxious to other people about it. And it's hard for me to keep quiet about that stuff because that stuff annoys me. And then the flip side of that is the rabid antis, and especially the X's, because too many of the X's, in my opinion, like it's one thing if you, like I've got a cousin, he's been out for a long time. He just living his life, cool guy. So far as I know, he doesn't hang his hat on being a dick to anyone who's still a member of the church, or anything about the church proper. The angry X's who quit and then they immediately flip around and spend all their time shitting on the church, shitting on the members, shitting on the leadership, shitting on the gospel. I don't have much tolerance for that because I'm just like, really? This is how you're going to spend your time? You have so many better things you could be doing, and this is how you're going to spend your time, is being a troll to people and something that you claim to not even be part of anymore. Like, if I quit something and I leave, I'm like, man, forget that. Like, if I've ever quit a job, right? if I quit a job and I'm like, I hated that job, like my civilian job before I was on active duty, like I am now, uh, I won't name names, but it was terrible. They were cheap, they were chintzy, they were bad to work for. I really hated my bosses. The harder I worked, the more they kicked me. So when I left that place finally, like I was like, I don't want to think about this place anymore. I don't want to think about these people. I don't want to talk about them. I want to get the hell out of here and just move on. So these angry exes that are fixated on being just craptastic to anybody who's still in the church or anybody that's like still practicing and dares to profess any kind of belief at all still, like they just swoop in like howler monkeys, and it's just like, wow, okay, that's who you want to be, is you want to be a hater. Like you're
Yeah.
drinking that haterade, you're drinking it all up, man.
As probably the least religious person in the group here, it's a interesting phenomenon I've noticed where people will they profess not to believe something, and yet they spend all their time talking about it and thinking about it and arguing about it. Like I don't believe in unicorns. I don't spend a lot of time talking about unicorns.
Right.
Yes, you do. That is bullshit. I have the receipts on the group text.
I talk about things that are real, like fish people.
Now, Coop and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are both Catholic, right?
Yes, I'm a
Okay.
practicing Catholic because I need the practice.
Okay. My wife was born and raised Catholic. I've got a number of Catholic friends, both in and out of the writing community and in and out of the military.
Guys, we're not starting shit here tonight. All right.
No. I see.
Which kind of Catholic? Okay, like Vatican II Catholic. Or...
my attitude with any practicing Christian specifically, and I don't care what denomination. My attitude is I try to be very ecumenical in my approach, because I look at the world and I look at how crazy it is now, and I mean literally crazy. Like the world is losing its mind and losing its soul in the process. And I think whatever bickering we might have amongst us as fellow Christians, and yes, I know there are people who would debate me and say, Mormons aren't Christian. What are you talking about? I will say, yes, we are. But I look for, like, you know what? There's all of us versus this monstrous, secular, woke creature from the deep that has risen up and has just taken over our society and seemingly taken over the institutions.
Also, fish people.
And correct, fish people are real.
And all the chemicals already turned them all gay, so it makes sense.
Right, correct. You know, Alex Jones called that one.
Yeah.
But no, I look at it like, you know, there's bigger fish to fry than having
Fish people.
slap fights, like intramural slap fights between the different denominations. And yes, it still happens. And yes, I'm probably still guilty of it, but I only get my back up if somebody comes at me and says, "You're Mormon. That means you're going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell." And I'm just like, really? Okay. All right. Let's go there. Mm-hmm.
And just tell him that your thetan levels are higher than his.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've got Scientologist friends too.
I will say one thing I enjoyed about living in Utah was telling people who didn't live in Utah all kinds of bullshit about Utah. They would just believe it.
Of course they did.
I had people convinced at one point. I was in the military. I was off somewhere in the military that, like, if you lived in Utah and you weren't Mormon, you had to pay a 5% tax.
I was just about to say the temple tax as a joke, and then
the tax.
Where you go.
Yeah, but I said, you know, it sucked. You know, you're not a member of the church, but you end up paying this tax to the state. But the tithing for the church is 10%, so really you're coming out ahead in the game.
And people will totally believe it, just like they'll believe. What's one of my favorites? Oh, that's right. We supposedly own R.J. Reynolds, the cigarette company. So, Coop, thanks for supporting us. I appreciate it. The money is
Well,
built
so I smoke
empire.
Newports, and I'm pretty sure that's like Carolina Baptist or something.
Yeah, there's we could rip each other to shreds. I try not to go there again with anybody that's any kind of Christian of any denomination.
Oh wait, I've got one. United Menthalist. No, but I think especially in the media, because, you know, there is a sense of, you know, gatekeeping with the publishers and studios and things like that. after 9/11, there was this huge influx of like the new atheism, which is actually kind of like waning because people are starting to see that it doesn't lead anywhere good. Like it doesn't provide any sort of fulfilling purpose in life.
Also,
But
it's full of really,
fundamentally
really
right.
cringe people.
yeah, but so is pretty much every religion, man. But after 9/11, there was this like resounding hatred for like the so-called irrationality of religion and like, oh, look, religious fervor will lead to untold violence. But they didn't know any Muslims to take that out on, or they felt bad that like these exotic people are getting treated badly, so they just refocused all of that hatred for religion onto Christianity because
Right.
they knew they
Yep.
weren't going to fight back.
And their parents by
And also it's like the Muslims weren't making them go to the mosque, but their parents were making them go to church. So they just redirected that sort of rage that
Yes.
became a thing after 9/11
Yes.
towards the familiar religious moral framework that they were subject to.
I think that's no joke. I have said for years that, because I've been asked this question, and here I will shamelessly plug. My first book for Bain was Chaplain's War, which is a religiously themed military hard science fiction book. How the hell do you combine those three things together?
With George Newbern as a narrator.
Correct. And he did a good job, too. I thought he did a great job. I was very pleased with his narration on that book. Very pleased. And people are like, how the heck do you, it's like science fiction hates religion, which too often is true because the population.
Star Trek.
Well, I mean, that's no joke, right? Like there are so many fans and writers and also editors. I mean, literary science fiction in the United States is home to a lot of people who basically ran away from their Midwest upbringing, from their farm town upbringing, from their churchy upbringing, and they're very, very invested in being very much against and hating on what they were brought up with, which usually includes some kind of religious background.
And there's no small amount of self-satisfied smug involved.
Right.
And this goes back even to the golden age of like your Asimov and your I'm blanking on.
H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
There was their version of science fiction was the new man, the future. We put away all the the childish things.
Well, like
actually, John C. Wright actually had a recent article on.
Oh yeah,
it's very long. I haven't even finished it yet, but
might as well be a book.
Yeah, it is a John C. Wright article, but he goes into that sort of like Coop and I especially have talked about the amount of Gnosticism in fantasy. Well, he points out that a lot of it with this forever evolution to apotheosis myth that has dominated so much of mainstream science fiction, it's the same thing.
Yeah. It's just deifying man to take the place of God, and then we wonder why everything's fucked up. And it's like, well, because humans are imperfect creatures. So
thank you very much. Like I can clearly remember as a teenager, like 16, 17 years old.
Well, your memory is better than mine. I can't remember myself as a teenager.
Well, that's because I didn't imbibe. I was boring. Again, the worst thing I ever did was look at big titties in Playboy magazine. And they were nice titties, I will say. The thing that
I'd have questions if you looked at bad ones.
No, that was
like a couple of pancakes.
Hustler had the bad ones. Yeah, Hustler.
Why do I continue to look? It's horrifying.
It's like a treasure.
But I can remember at being 16, 17 years old. Again, I hadn't quit the church, but I was just not doing anything right, and was just kind of this typical teenager for the time. And I was a huge Star Trek fan, and I kind of bought it. I kind of bought that whole, in a couple centuries we're going to evolve beyond religion because it's just a bunch of superstition, and who needs that anyway? We're smart, we'll evolve. That was Star Trek's whole thing, was that human beings would, quotes, evolve, big air quotes. And as an adult, especially after, being married, having a kid myself, being in the military, civilian job, like after all these experiences, it became very evident to me that human nature doesn't change. I believe firmly that we are the same people we've always been, going back 10,000 years or more, and we will continue to be those people. And that means this whole notion that we're going to evolve beyond religion is complete crap. And we know that now, especially because what has replaced actual religion in the lives of many people? Wokeness or environmentalism or trans.
Well, that or equally religious stuff. They just call it mindfulness, and you have to
Oh,
do
right.
yoga in
Yeah.
order to do it.
Right. California religion, right? Like I'm going to do yoga and put on my incense and drink my ayahuasca and have my ayahuasca trip, and that's my religion.
I'm not religious. I'm spiritual.
Yes, thank you. There you go.
Here's what I hate about that is that is like saying I'm not into martial arts. I'm just violent. Or like, I can't cook. I'm just hungry. You know what I mean? Like to make it less inflammatory. But
right.
It's
like, I don't study martial art. I just get into fights.
I have this desire for spiritual connection and spiritual fulfillment, but I have no structure of discipline or formation to go along with that. So to the point where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm spiritual, which means that if something sounds good to me, I'll do it. And if it doesn't, I'll reject it. It was like, that's just religion a la carte. And that's just self-worship.
Yeah.
Because if God thinks everything that you do, you don't worship God, you just worship yourself.
Yeah. And here's what surprises me about being back in Utah after being gone for 14 years. So I lived up in the Northwest from 93 to 2008. And then coming back to Utah, like Utah is regarded as like the Mecca of Mormonism. And Mormonism has the rep of being super duper conservative, super duper mega religious, blah, blah, blah. But then I come back.
Newspapers.
What's that?
Except for your newspapers.
Except for our newspapers, right? The Trib sucks and the Deseret News sucks. But that's part of the problem because coming back, I discovered this, which maybe it was there all along and I just didn't know it when I was younger. But as an adult, I clearly see it. There's this heavy trend, seemingly among many people who live along the I-15 corridor between Ogden and Provo, who are trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be Mormon, but they want to have all their progressive politics, including adopting and espousing and promoting all these ideas that are very contra the church doctrine. They're very contra the scriptures, just basic stuff in the New Testament. It's like, really? You're gonna embrace and espouse that. And
as Catholics, Pete and I would know nothing about that. We've never had to go through that.
And I was just like, how can you be someone, especially if you were born and raised here, how can you be somebody who claims to understand the gospel of this church and then embraces all of the secular bullshit of the progressive university establishment and what's coming out of the Democrats? Like I used to vote Democrat back when I didn't know better. Say it again. What'd you say? So, full disclosure, yes, I voted for Democrats. The last one I voted for that was of any note was Al Gore in 2000. I just can't. There's no way I could do it now. Absolutely no way. I am just. Oh wait, we got a. Bob Cruz says Utah is no different than Minnesota in that the closer you get to the tallest buildings in the state. Oh, so Bob. Okay, the interesting part about that is at least for now, where I work is a little teeny thumbnail-sized military installation called Fort Douglas, which in Salt Lake City is up near the University of Utah, and the area around the University of Utah is the most progressive, woke, hyper left-wing area of the state. And you're absolutely right. It's just pathetic how, man, again, this is stuff I never thought would be possible in this state, but it's here. And it's not far off from like when I lived in Seattle, especially in certain parts of Salt Lake City, which are, I mean, people don't realize this, but Salt Lake City is majority non-Mormon. And even many of the Mormons that live in Salt Lake City hold these beliefs that are directly in contradiction to what they've been taught their whole lives if they were born and raised here. And how
Next
they
you're going to be
manage,
telling me there's a college there.
that's not BYU, right? There actually
Yeah.
are colleges in the state that aren't BYU, and even BYU. I think you guys have Dave Butler on, DJ Butler.
We did.
He will talk forever about the
Yes, he will.
problems with BYU. Yeah, he will go on and on and on about the problems that he sees with BYU, and I can't say that he's wrong. And BYU supposedly is the Mormon school owned and operated by the LDS Church, and there is some wackos teaching at BYU, and that are happily in opposition to what the church says. And in my opinion, what you read right there in the scriptures, again, I'll point back to the New Testament and say, what you believe is in direct contradiction to what is right here in the scriptures. And I don't know how you can call yourself a practicing LDS person and be espousing what you're espousing, but it's happening. And seemingly nobody cares or nobody does anything about it yet.
Just wait until you find out about Notre Dame.
Oh man, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Now, Notre Dame, if I remember correctly, is a private school, right? It's not state sponsored at all. It is completely Catholic run, completely Catholic funded.
It's Jesuit run.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's
How is that different? I don't understand.
Oh boy.
That's a long one.
I'm honestly so Jesuit is one of the monastic traditions, right?
Well,
Not
they would be
technically
mandated.
they've never been a cloistered order. They were actually formed as part of the Counter-Reformation.
Okay.
And they, as the Society of Jesus, they were quite effective in many ways at defending the Catholic faith against many of its detractors.
Okay.
Until about the 1960s.
Yeah.
When they decided that, well, in those days it was truth and justice that has since been changed to social justice was going to become their primary charism rather than the discernment of spirits. So there are still a few good Jesuits out there, but there are a lot of them who are pretty much the Catholic version of exactly what you were saying about Mormons. It's if it seems like about 7 times out of 10 you see some sort of weird left-wing, touchy-feely, completely heretical opinion thrown out there. Oh, there's an SJ after his name.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
So they used to be like one of the coolest religious organizations in the Catholic Church. The problem is they're structured like a military branch, where it's very I don't want to say rank, but like those positions,
Very regimented.
Yeah, and so when you need to replace people or bring them up and promote people, as it were, it's very top down. We select who we want for this position. So if somebody gets high enough, they kind of run everything below them, and they get to choose who comes up through the ranks and all that stuff. So if you have somebody that wants to take a very hard left turn, everybody under them who's going to fill in the empty billets, as it were, is going to be selected by that person. And so when all of your best members get killed in the Holocaust, there's a lot of vacancies that get filled by whoever's left there. So that's why post 1940s, things started to take a turn, and by 60s, they were, in full swing.
Wow. Okay. That's inside baseball. I did not know. I did not know.
Well, they do have a baseball team, I'm sure. But
well, one of the comments here was Evil Penguin wrote, Notre Dame takes their religious beliefs seriously. How dare you question their belief in their football team?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Saint Rudy.
That's kind of true here in Utah as well. The Cougar fans, that's the BYU Cougar football team, are ultra mega fanatical.
Not by college football standards. Like,
oh, okay, all right.
BYU and like University of Utah have like a rivalry.
Yeah,
where they talk shit and people get their feelings hurt. Like down in the South, sometimes people occasionally die.
Yeah.
It's
on a scale of 1 to Auburn versus Alabama, how bad is it?
It's maybe like a third of that.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I've been told by some of the people from the SEC who are Legion in the Army that yeah, any football that's west of the Mississippi doesn't matter. Doesn't count. Fans don't count. The teams don't count. But yeah, to kind of bring it back around, yeah, the culture and what's happening in this country in particular dismays me, disheartens me. Um, I've seen this impact in my own family with people very close to me, and there's seemingly nothing I can do about it because trying to have what I consider to be a positive influence when they're woke and determined to be woke and just going whole hog into the trans thing or going into whatever. It's like watching somebody descend into a cult, honestly. Um, and the more you try to say no, don't go there, the more they run away from you. And this seems to be happening all over the country all at once. It's unreal how quickly it's happened too. I could not have imagined any of this being the way it is. Even 15 years ago, I think I would have been skeptical if someone in 2008, when we moved back, had said, "Yeah, all this stuff, just watch what's going to happen." I would have said,
Things
"No."
definitely
I think
some stupid turn in the last 10 years. That's
Well, I think that goes because Brad, you were saying earlier, like you could have never imagined, the distrust that we have in our institutions 10, 15 years ago or back in 92. I think it's because back then we didn't really have a grasp on the institutional capture that's taken place.
Yeah.
Through
Right.
and I'm not saying it started in the 90s, it started
Oh,
about 100
no,
years
no, no,
before
no.
that. We just didn't see the ramifications or acknowledge it until the last decade or so.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. Like now that the tinfoil has been peeled off the rotten TV dinner, it's like, oh, this was going on under our noses
Yeah.
for a long time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's interesting too with the military. Mike has pointed this out before when he said, the real Pentagon, the real military, the real three-letter agencies aren't anything like what Tom Clancy painted them as, right? Like I was a Clancy reader for Red Storm Rising and numerous books after that. I read a lot of techno thrillers, and they were all fairly similar in the patterns they followed, in that they presented the three-letter agencies and the Pentagon like, yeah, there were some shitheads in there, but it was mostly, robust, proud Americans going to get the job done, decent men who are honest men and have integrity, and no one's going to throw anybody under the bus and all this stuff. And it was wonderful fiction and wonderful characters, but then here we are, and the real three-letter agencies and the real military is so disappointing on so many levels, and even pernicious, like openly
Yeah.
pernicious in ways that I'm like, how?
and this
It's
is
weird. Once you peek inside the curtain at like who actually works in there and how they do things, like reading those old techno thrillers by Tom Clancy or Dean Koontz or whoever, from like the 90s up
Yeah,
until
Stephen
the
Koontz, I think is who you're thinking of. Yeah, Stephen
yeah,
Koontz.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Stephen Koontz. Yeah.
But
Dean Koontz was horror.
it's like reading a cozy mystery for guys that like guns.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not
Yeah.
wrong in that analogy. Yeah, you're right.
it's like what if
Well,
Hallmark made
this
action
is
movies?
Marple in Hard to Kill.
Yeah.
Oh, watching Top Gun Maverick was the same way.
Right.
You're just like, man, I miss the days when I could think it was like this.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. I totally agree.
I actually had a conversation with a captain many years ago, and he pointed something out that I hadn't thought about before. But he said that every officer who's in charge now, and again, this was this was 15 years ago. So every officer who's in charge now came up through the Clinton years. And
It's weird how we keep going back to 2008. What happened then?
Good question.
Yeah.
Housing crash? It's the most obvious explanation.
Oh yeah. Obviously.
Yeah. That's one thing as a senior warrant. Like I literally work with way more colonels than I want to. And you get to see that, even the high rankers who have a bird on their hat, or maybe even have a star or two on their hat. They wipe their asses just like everyone else. They're prone to groupthink just like everyone else. Some of them are horribly self-centered narcissists who literally only care about themselves and their own advancement, and would throw everyone and anyone under the bus the instant they thought it would help them. So all these things that were not apparent to me at all as a kid, reading techno thrillers, have definitely hit home over the past 10 years, especially. And it's strange to be at this point where I still believe in the fundamental principles of the country, like the founding principles. And as a Mormon, we tend to think of the founding as a genuine spiritual event, like a God made this happen, or at least God opened the door for it. So I want to still think that the country has a trajectory that came from a divine place. But what we've done with it and what we're doing with it is just horrifically bad.
You mean what the Illuminati's doing to it?
Well, right, yeah, right.
It's almost a conspiracy.
Right.
Are you paying attention yet?
If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. Oh, wait, that's the liberal phrase. That's what the liberals always said. Oh, now we're saying it too. I mean, that's the horseshoe theory, right? Like,
But it's not even horseshoe theory. It's that everybody who's old enough to become politically active and all that stuff, they all came through the same educational and cultural system that the left did. It's all this European style Hegelian dialectic bullshit. So it's like they're just approaching it from a different angle, but still the only way they know how, which is this perpetual revolutionary mindset. So
yeah, and I've been on about that for a few years now. It's because particularly on the right, a lot of the times we'll point to communism as being the ultimate problem, and it is an enormous problem. But it's
the way of thinking that led to communism.
It's a branch of the problem, that revolutionary mindset where if I just toss the table, burn everything down, and rebuild from the ground up, then everything's going to be perfect. And it's a lie that's been kicking around probably for the entirety of human history, and it is diabolical, and it's never actually delivered on the promise.
No.
Because every time you kick the table over, every time you just burn everything to the ground, oh hey, it's not so easy to build it right back up there.
Imagine that, especially for people who've never actually done manual labor in their lives. No. They have no idea. It's like, you really want to burn it down to the ground and start again. Like, it's not even
just the physical matter. These people are trying to tear down the basic fundamental foundations of society itself.
Right.
Because everything is a social construct.
Right. Including gender.
And you have the communists on you have the communists on one hand, and then you have the libertarians on the other hand. And boy, this always pisses certain people off, but their stated end goal is the same. That
how do you figure?
There's a reason that anarchists and socialist movements have always walked hand in hand throughout history, and you see this a lot during like the 1800s and that stuff. So while these anarchist movements and these socialist and communist movements were rising in the same sort of time frame, they always worked together and had the same goals, and it was to get rid of the institutions that are already, sort of guiding humanity and culture and society, because they want to get to this utopian end state where there is no institution over you, and it's just whatever your natural desires and human instinct and base desires, that is now moral, and that you can indulge in those. Okay. And there's nobody to tell you you're wrong.
Right.
It's just that the communists, especially if you read Marx and the people who came before him and that he was inspired by, they decided that you needed to replace all these institutions with a despotic, authoritarian regime that would eventually collapse in on itself. The anarchists, and thus like the really hardcore libertarians, they think you can skip that step and just tear it down and it'll all be good. So that's what Pete and I generally talk about when we say that they have the same stated end goals. It's just their methodology around it is
Is different.
Yeah.
Even Marx wrote about eventually the state will just melt away and there will be no structure and everyone will just live in harmony. Everyone according to their ability and according to their need or whatever.
The theory goes that government won't be because everyone will have evolved into a good communist. But that never happens, of course, because it's nonsense. But
Contra human nature completely, right?
And if you don't, if you doubt there's some horseshoe going on here, take for instance that anti-Ukraine war rally they had a couple months back, I think. You had the Libertarian Party Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, I think, put it on. A bunch of communists showed up, like a bunch of pro-Russia guys showed up, a bunch of like anarchist types showed up, and they're all rooting for the same thing. So,
I mean, you saw that during the Summer of Love, where a bunch of the Boogaloo Boys showed up to support the riots because they thought that, oh, we're doing it, we're tearing everything down, you know. Mommy and Daddy aren't going to send me to church on Sunday, you know, like. So.
Well, I have one comment, and then I want to get to something that people have been putting in the chat. I don't think people realize, or it seems to me, that people don't realize how interconnected the baseline functions of daily civilization are, and that if you rip that down or you disrupt it to any degree, it doesn't just snap back all on its own. People actually have to engage and put that back the way it was. And if you damage it bad enough, and especially if you get rid of the people who are used to putting it back, it's not going to be there anymore. And nobody in today's world in America has any idea how to grow their own food, how to clean and have sanitary water. Can anyone in the city survive for longer than maybe 48 hours or 72 hours without suddenly being starving and or no water and or they're injured and there's no medical help? I mean, British science historian James Burke covered this beautifully 40 years ago in the opening episode of his famous series Connections, where he looked at that question. He called it technology traps. And he said, what happens if you take away this fundamental infrastructure? And he went through everything, that would, logically happen if you took away something like electricity. And he cited the blackout, the 77 blackout in New York, as a good example of how civilization decays incredibly rapidly as soon as you take away a fundamental piece of the infrastructure. I wanted to get some of the commenters had mentioned Ward Carroll. So Mike Cooper chastised me for arguing and upsetting people. I'm sorry, guys. I have upset Ward Carroll in the past because I've argued with him. Ward Carroll is he's actually not far from Coop. He's there in Maryland, as far as I know.
Yeah, so he's a Navy guy.
Time out. Okay, back up. Number one, we don't have to answer all the comments here. We don't have to.
Well, I just wanted to point out that
who is Ward Carroll?
Ward Carroll is a former Tomcat Rio who stayed in the Navy long enough. I think he did a full 20, maybe even longer. But he rose up the ranks of as a Navy officer, and now he does like a podcast mainly around like naval aviation and stuff like that. He also has a book called like Punk's War, or a book series.
Yes. So his naval aviation podcast is generally very interesting. If you're an airplane geek like I am, that's how I found him, was through the podcast. His Twitter, at least until recently, I've kind of deliberately stayed away from it because last summer I was kind of calling him out on some bullshit that I thought was legit bullshit, because he was incredibly anti, he hates MAGA, he hates Trump, right? Which means he hates all of Trump's voters. And some of the stuff he was saying, I was just like, you know what? I know these people, and they're not anything like you're portraying them as.
Yeah.
And I get it. If you don't like Trump, fine. I don't care, but the way
I don't like Trump. Just
I mean,
put it out there.
He's a politician now, right? Like, it's the old movie saying, I loved it, from Carlito's Way, after Sean Penn as the lawyer shoots, no, he doesn't shoot. He he clubs the mob boss to death in the lake.
Oh, whoa! Spoiler alert!
Yeah,
Anyway, long story short,
I've only had 20 years to watch this movie.
Sean Penn's character ends up in the hospital, and he's scared to death, and he's got this revolver because he knows the mob is going to come get him. And the main character, Al Pacino's character, is like, "You're not a lawyer anymore. You're a gangster now." So when Trump crossed over from business tycoon and reality TV star to politician,
He became a gangster.
correct, he became a gangster. So fair game. But I react badly to any time MAGA people are portrayed the way they are often portrayed, because I know a great many MAGA here in Utah. Some of them are my friends, some of them are my family, and the mindless way that they are slandered and misportrayed by people who don't like Trump, especially with somebody like a mill vet. To me, that's why it bothered me enough to want to argue with Ward over it, because I was like, dude, you're a mill vet. You know some of these people just like I know them, and I didn't vote for Trump either. But you're talking like they're a bunch of dangerous.
As your good buddy Mike Cole found out, that's your audience.
Oh, yeah,
so,
right.
I mean,
right.
So
you can only bash on people so much not buying your books.
The thing with Ward Carroll, though, is he is very dyed-in-the-wool pro the institution.
Yes.
And that's where he comes at it. That's why he doesn't like the MAGA. Is because we're talking about the distrust of institutions. Most of that right now, currently, is on the MAGA side. So, that's why, the 30-year plus military officers aren't big fans of MAGA, despite the fact that, the military tends to be more right-wing, pro-Trump on that stuff, is because it's very different to be, a lance criminal who sees the shit end of the stick on most military operations versus somebody who is, at the top.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It hasn't actually been in the dirt for the last 15 years.
Right.
So it's important to remember too that not everybody is terminally online, and a lot of the stuff that's been in the online discourse for the past several years at least is almost unheard of in the real world, right? Even now, right? Like stuff people scream about on Twitter, nobody talks about outside of Twitter. Like even like stuff that's actually in the news, like when the Ukraine war had just started, like a couple months later, a lady cutting my hair asked me if that thing in Ukraine was still going on, just making chit chat. That's how much average people, because people have jobs, they have lives, they have things to worry about besides, what the latest news flash of the day is.
You should have spun that just a bit like Eurovision. I don't think it's happening this time of year.
I don't follow soccer.
I agree with you, Mike, and I'm guilty. I'm probably way more guilty than anybody of being way too much in this soup.
I am guilty of it as well. But the thing to remember is getting outside and just talking to people who aren't online is a good way of reminding yourself of what the rest of the world is like.
Yes.
That's not to say these things don't have real world consequences.
Right.
They do. These people, I mean, look at how seemingly out of nowhere in some cases, or how fast the woke crazies took over everything. Like it wasn't that long ago. These people were just like this was like Tumblr cringe. It was like a joke that we all made fun of.
Right.
Bro, I'm telling you, the day that Tumblr banned porn is the day that Twitter became this fucking cesspool. Because they all moved over to Twitter.
So,
the online world is
The other thing is,
it's like a parallel reality, right? It's real, but it's not real. And the unreal has slopped over the edge into the real world in really strange and unfortunate ways. I hate to say it. I see this with my kid. She's 20 years old. And some of the stuff she's imbibed and now takes as gospel truth is it could only have come from the online world. This is not stuff that would have germinated in anywhere other than maybe a university campus, like a faculty lounge or something. It's that stupid.
It's less prevalent in older generations who
don't know how the internet works.
Pretty well, yeah. I mean, there's probably a sliding scale for how old you are versus how online you are for most people. But you think like the young people, the Zoomers, they've had social media literally their whole lives.
Yeah.
You know what the best part about that though is that the real young generation, like the late Zoomers, early Alpha, whatever the fuck you want to call them, generational labels are stupid. But
Yes.
they're like getting off of social media at a rate that you haven't seen since the technically or technologically illiterate generations, and to the point where like Facebook is now the boomer social media platform.
So funny.
Like,
My daughters told me
of
that.
course I don't have a Facebook. Fuck that. That's where all the old divorced dads are at. Like
Yep.
that's, or half of them aren't even on Twitter. Basically their social media is YouTube, whatever Discord server they're on, which is
Discord.
its own problem,
Yeah,
or
that's my
whatever like
daughter's Discord.
internet chat room there, or video game multiplayer chat room they're in.
Discord was my daughter's thing, and she was on that initially for video games, but the stuff she talked to people about went way beyond it.
Yep.
And I like too many parents, my wife and I were kind of oblivious. Looking back on it, I wish I would have kept her the hell off. Now, it would have been incredibly difficult to do. We would have basically had to have only given her like a really rudimentary little flip burner phone that couldn't really be on the internet. It was only good to like call mom and dad when you need mom and dad.
Here's
Mobile,
your
baby.
old people phone with the big
Correct.
button, you know?
And somehow we would have had to have fought the inertia of her going to friends' houses,
Right.
and of course getting on the internet there, right? That's the easiest thing in the world for a 13 or a 14-year-old to do. Bye, mom and dad. I'm going to my friend's house, and then they're on the internet there, and you're fucked.
Joke's on you. You don't have any friends anymore.
You are in prison. Go to the basement and stay there. But yeah, the internet is a parallel, strange, alternate reality that too often seems to infect real reality in very bad ways. And again, I kind of feel funny talking about it like that, because I'm as guilty of anybody as anybody of being online way too much, probably way more than is good. Sometimes at the end of the day, I'll get done with all the bickering on Twitter or whatever, and I'll just think, was that really a good use of my time? Because all I did was
It's never yes. It's
right.
like,
No, right. Yeah, like yeah. Because all I've done is argue with a bunch of fucking burner accounts that half of them are just trolling anyway, right?
Right.
And I'm just like, why did I do that? I could have done so much something
Mike
else.
Mike Glier's army of Chinese bots.
Yeah.
Did that thing ever go down in China? Did they ever actually have?
Yeah, that apparently it happened. I heard
Yes,
it
it did. I only know that because Neil Clark was celebrating his Hugo. I think one of his many Hugos. So I was like, oh, that's right. The Hugos happened. I forgot about that. So yes,
Everybody did.
apparently ChinaCon did happen. I don't know where it's happening next year. I confess that post 2016, my shits to give about that whole scene drastically decreased.
Nobody cares about the Hugo Awards anymore.
No,
I mean, to the extent that anyone ever really did. I mean, outside of certain very small, writer-oriented circles,
Sure.
most people didn't even know what the Hugo was.
I'm going to be honest, man. I kind of suspect that for like 10 years prior to Sad Puppies, nobody gave a shit about the Hugos either.
no, it's true.
It was just the culture war
It was
front.
they got so vicious because the stakes were so small.
Yes,
I mean, that's what it
Yeah.
was. It
right.
was something that in the big picture didn't matter, but it mattered to them. You were stepping on their little corner of turf, and by God, they weren't going to have that. Oh, no.
Correct.
You know what my favorite part about all this though is, because Brad, like you brought up like Critical Drinker and all them. What's funny is I'll occasionally watch like a bit of their live streams, and they'll be like, "Oh man, the woke crowd is coming for books now too." It's just like, where the fuck have you guys been?
Well, the thing is, like, Sad Puppies kind of happened at the same time Gamergate was going on.
Yeah, right.
It happened a little bit before, because I remember Gamergate came on the crowd and was like, "What's the Sad Puppies thing?" Oh yeah, sure, we'll jump in on that too.
And as much as Sad Puppies occupy the lives of so many people I know, outside of those circles, I don't think most people had ever heard of it, or a bunch of sci-fi authors are arguing about an award.
Because most people didn't
sounds-
read back then either.
It sounds kind of gay when you put it like that. No offense.
No, you're right. You're right. you know, in a certain way, I want to think that we did at least one good thing, and that the Hugos, at least for a brief little time, kind of mattered to more people outside of that strange little world. But I got excommunicated. I was excommunicated promptly. I had many people I thought were my friends pretty much tell me to fuck off and die, because I had committed the grievous sin of questioning the lovely Hugos and their perfection and their glory. And how do you dare question how this is done? It's not a in group of friends giving each other awards. That's not how it works. It's about the actual art. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I've seen behind the curtain.
Well,
You're wrong.
Well, the best part is, Brad, is they tell you that and then be like, and just for that, we're never giving you an award. And
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to make sure of it, man.
Well,
You're done.
Now, all those people who hated you and called you all those things and said you were racist or whatever, remember that they said you were. Remember, they said your black wife was a shield for your racism.
Correct. Yes.
That's playing the long game right there.
That's how dastardly.
What's funny is the guy that said that was in a mixed race relationship and isn't anymore. But as far as I know, Brad's still trucking along with that.
Correct.
No, it's one thing. The Klan was always big on interracial marriage. That was always one of their we're going to breed that out of those minorities. But
we had Larry on 2 months ago. That's the Portuguese talk that we say.
Right.
That was the Spanish model of conquest, though.
Yeah.
That's where Mexico.
Yeah. Really, any of the Romance languages. If you were part of the Roman Empire and didn't have Hadrian's Wall on your island, it was kind of just a mixed race smorgasbord.
Welcome to our nation. We are going to breed with you now.
Yeah, it is now our nation.
Correct. You are us and we are you.
Well, that's what kills me about the.
But Brad, so they said all these mean things about you, and they called you all these names, and they made your life miserable. And
yes,
I should just stop there.
That's
but
a fact.
There's a but. But now Worldcon was in Chengdu, China. And this year, the guest of honor was a Russian science fiction writer who was a notorious militant Russian nationalist.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The Russians kidnapping Ukrainian kids and bringing them back to Russia.
That's right.
So all the things they were saying about you and Larry and the entire committee to prevent sad puppies or puppy-related sadness. Their own guest of honor at their con was like one of the worst people in the world.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's really fucking funny.
It's true.
That's really funny. And that means you won.
No, you're right. You're right. That's a completely true statement. The hypocrisy of it. Well, maybe these days I should say I'm not surprised, because one of the things that really disillusioned me after I'd been publishing for a couple of years was how, for so many people, it wasn't even about principle. It was just this weird pose, people posing. And again, the online was a big part of that, and would screw each other over at the drop of a hat. And again, I had a lot of friends, people I thought were my friends, and clearly they turned out not to be, who it just for nothing, just so they could say they were on the right side of it, right? I need to make sure I'm on the right side of this thing because it might hurt my career. Even some people, and I won't name names, but a couple people I would consider mentors did that. Thankfully, the real mentors didn't. Guys like Mike Resnick, who died a few years ago, he was always solid. And I love Mike to death because he invested a lot in me.
That was there through the whole thing to keep you straight, Brad.
Well, it was nice having you and Larry kind of on the back channel, because you guys were like a sanity saver a lot. Because there were points that I remember between the hate mail and what I was seeing online, and then like my wife and I are driving in the car and we turn on NPR because my wife loves NPR, and here's the NPR story.
Gross.
Here's the NPR story. Oh, Sad Puppies is a white, hateful, racist Nazi organization, and they're trying to ruin science fiction's precious award. And my wife's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and she's just like, nothing they said in that little 30-second, news story was true. And I said, you're right, it wasn't true. And yet that was just common. It was just people lying through their teeth about who I was, about who Larry was, about who any of the authors were. Um, and then the culture war crap on top of that with people that didn't even care about science fiction. They were just in it because they're like, yeah, we're going to get the fascists. We need to screw the fascists. We don't care who the fascists are. Point us to who the fascists are and we'll go get them.
We need to screw the fascists by taking over the corporations and the free market.
Correct. We're going to fight fire with fire, damn it.
Yeah, so that they toe the party line, right?
Of course, their definition of fascist is rather different from the early to mid 20th century definition of fascism used by the actual fascists.
Right.
But,
Right. Just like, they'll always argue with you that the Nazis weren't really socialists.
I actually got involved.
My favorite thing about that is we can't be fascist. We're anti-fascist. That's in the name.
Right.
Also, the Nazis weren't socialists just because it's the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Correct.
Right. The double think is brilliant on that one. I've noticed that too. I've seen that.
I think it was a year or two ago. There was somebody arguing with Larry about how the Nazis weren't fascist, weren't socialists. They were the opposite of socialists. I went ahead and found the passage in William Shirer's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, like 5 pages worth, about the total control over the German economy by the party. Yeah, it was like talking to a brick wall.
Of course. Well, it's like, I'm guilty of arguing with these people too much again on Twitter. There was a joker that I had on there a few weeks ago. And I swear he was being serious. I do not think he was, being a pose law troll. He was defending Stalin, and he was claiming all these atrocities like, what was the Polish massacre where they massacred a bunch of Polish in 1941?
Katyn.
Yes, he was claiming the Nazis did that. When everybody in Poland, now I've been to Poland. I spent some time in Poland for Operation Anaconda in 2016. The Poles are under no illusions about who really did that. But here's this American dickhead seriously arguing that no, that was all the Nazis. And I could name thing after thing that Stalin was either partially or directly responsible for in the Soviet Union, and he would just not accept any of it. And he's all calling me, you're a Nazi apologist and all this bullshit. And I'm just like, okay, this is pointless. I can't. Yeah. This person is impenetrable.
They also don't want to accept the fact that one of the loudest voices for isolationism and not interfering in Hitler's expansionism up until July 1941 was the Communist Party USA at the behest of Moscow Center.
Right. Yeah, yep. Sure. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Convenient fact of history forgotten, right?
Yeah. As for the comments about, any desire to return to traditional Christianity as a society, well, that's fascist, that's Nazi. Yeah, my confirmation saint was a Franciscan priest who was killed at Auschwitz.
Oh, really? Now,
yes.
So I have a dummy question then. Confirmation saint, what does that mean?
You want to take this from Coop?
Yeah, when you get confirmed, you choose a saint to venerate and pray to guide you through the confirmation process.
Oh, okay. So they have to be someone who's been officially canonized by the Catholic Church?
Yeah, okay. You can't just be like, well, grandma's my confirmation saint.
Sure. Okay. So your confirmation saint was killed at Auschwitz?
St. Maximilian Kolbe was
really?
a Polish Franciscan, and he was killed at Auschwitz. There were a lot of Catholic priests, especially, who purely by virtue of being a Catholic priest were sent to the death camps.
So when the Nazis invaded Italy after they, basically broke up the fascist party of Italy and returned sovereignty over to the king, the Nazis invaded because they didn't want the Allies to have a staging area to get into Germany.
And to rationalize their thinking, Italy did have a history of switching sides in world wars.
Yeah. It's like, that's Italians, period. And it's like, who's winning? Okay, yeah, I'll go with it.
They're temperamental people, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating.
Hey, we're great at fixing horse races, so we always bet on whichever horse is out in front. Okay, so the Nazis invaded Italy, and when they did that, they brought along their the final solution. Italy, the Italians, by and large, this was a nation that had just stopped being fascist like a month ago, were as some of the greatest protectors of their Jewish population. They didn't even see the Jews as like non-Italians or a different race. They were just like, these guys have been here since like the Roman era. Like we're just gonna protect them, to the point where the chief rabbi of Rome eventually converted to Catholicism afterwards, because the Vatican and
Wow.
the Italian people basically protected as many Jews as they could during this extermination program.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
I
fascinating.
don't
I did
think
not know
the
that.
Italian brand of fascism was really as on board with the racial stuff as
No, they weren't, because
No, they weren't.
So when basically Hitler and the Nazi Party in Germany forced the Italian fascist party to implement the Italian racial laws, it was basically the same kind of shit that was going on in Germany, and it was remarkably unpopular even amongst the leaders of the Italian fascist party. The only ones who were really on board was Mussolini, and like one or two of his lackeys, because they wanted to secure the military allyship with Germany. Everybody else was like, no, this is fucking stupid. Also, like, they're calling us filthy meds. Like, we're not on board with this. And also, it goes back to what we were talking about before, where it's like, if you speak a Romance language, yeah, you don't care about this mixed marriage bullshit. You're there to slap some dark cheeks, I guess, as it were. But they were not about the racial law.
Guilty.
What was that, Mike?
I'm hearing the jumping on a turtle sound from Super Mario Brothers now.
Ba-ding, 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 ba-ding. One up,
Gotta
one
level
up,
up,
one
bro.
up, one up. Guilty is charged. No, that's
we're right across the sea from Africa. It's gonna happen. I mean,
that's the fascinating thing about classical times, right? Is this debate over who was it? Was it Jada Pinkett that was Cleopatra, and like Egypt?
she was the producer for that documentary. I don't know if she actually like played Cleopatra.
Documentary. Let's make sure we
right.
get this on that one.
And like the country of Egypt sued, saying this
For
is
like billions
wrong.
of dollars.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But people don't realize it's like in classical times, the whole Mediterranean was this interracial stew pot that just went round and round and round.
The whole idea of a lot of this race stuff didn't really come around until, for the most part, the 18th, 19th century.
Yeah,
Darwinism. Once Darwinism picked up, there was this new. Suddenly, we weren't all children of God. We were our own races and our own branches of human evolution. People jumped on like evolution without really like knowing what the fuck evolution really was.
It gave them a pseudo-scientific cover for their previous bigotry.
And then so they also mixed that in, because right around that time there was this huge uptick in mysticism and like spirit mediumship and all that shit. And that's where you also get like a lot of the hermetic circles and this occult bullshit. And it all kind of got woven in with this branch of philosophy called theosophy, which was some Russian aristocrat spent some time in India, tried to mix all this ancient Hindu theology with.
This wasn't Rasputin, was it?
No, this was Helena
Oh,
Blavatsky,
okay.
something like that.
Blavatsky.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and
theosophy came. I think theosophy came from somebody else before that.
so either way, she's the one that popularized it, and so she got into this huge thing about like this racial evolution stuff, and like we used to all be giant Atlanteans, and we were way more advanced, and then we devolved into what we are now, and then we have to re-evolve back into like these mystical giants and that shit.
Oh, really?
I was a giant Atlantean. You guys weren't.
Yeah.
So we got to become 10 foot tall Amazonian.
Some
live
shit
for
like
500 years.
Yeah, and so that's where you get. That's why the Germans were claiming to be descendants of Aryans, even though Aryans is Indian subcontinent, Iranian race, is because this jackass named Guido von List, who was into like the runic magic and that shit, he basically took theosophy and the Indian and Tibetan theology that was wrapped up in that and transplanted that to Germans to be like, no, the Germanic people were the real Aryans, and that took off. Everybody was really fucked up on some dumbass shit in the early 1900s, late 1800s, because it was all this this idea of like, okay, well, like, so Christianity is fake because evolution, therefore we have to figure out like this new spiritual stuff. And that's how
which is all made up out of whole cloth for the most part.
Yeah, and that's why you had like a fucking no shit branch of the Nazi Party that was trying to like research how to find Vril, which was this fictional fucking energy element that was that was made up whole cloth for a fictional book that sold well in Germany.
Well, I didn't.
Vril, V-R-I-L.
V-R-I-L.
Oh, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah,
because it's not real.
It's not real, but apparently there were some Nazis who thought it was real, which
they
makes
spent
some
money on
people,
this. It's like during the war when they're losing, they were spending money on this.
Wow. Wow.
It really puts some of the edgelords online who try to build up the Third Reich as
The Werewolves guys.
Yeah.
The Reich did nothing wrong.
You're talking about like what is the brilliant German strategy. Like if they were that, or how I saw one thing about how Germans had so many PhDs in their officer corps, and it was like, yeah, but we have the most PhDs in an officer corps. They cried as an aluminum overcast of bombers was leveling their cities.
It's interesting.
Again,
go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
we run into the ignorance of history in general. That's at this point completely unforgivable, but they justify it with, oh, well, you weren't taught the real history. But if you look at the timeline, these people, we backed the wrong horse. We should have backed Hitler against the communists. It's like, okay, let's take a look at the timeline here.
Who declared war on who again?
Right.
Hitler makes a non-aggression pact with Stalin, splits Poland between the two of them, and then goes west into Belgium, Holland, France, etc. And finally has Britain cut off.
Yeah, he was so worried.
Not even 6 months after he goes back on that deal and invades the Soviet Union, we get attacked by his ally, the Japanese, at which point he declares war on us. Where was this window where we were supposed to back Hitler against the Soviet Union?
Right. No, I've seen that. There was some joker on Twitter that was doing that just a couple of weeks ago, where he was basically claiming that Roosevelt was Stalin's commie cuck and Hitler did nothing wrong.
I mean,
we backed the wrong horse, blah, blah, blah.
Don't get me wrong. Roosevelt was entirely too enamored with Uncle Joe, right?
Roosevelt was entirely enamored with both of them.
Yeah.
He was enamored with Stalin, with Hitler, with Mussolini. Any that European style socialism horseshit, no matter what flavor it was, he wanted some of that here.
You know who and meanwhile, he sidelined Winston Churchill, our ally, the guys we were fighting side by side with throughout the whole war.
Yeah.
Well, that's FDR.
Which even our troops on the ground in Germany towards the end of the war, they were wondering, it's like, why the fuck aren't we taking Berlin? Are we just handing this to the Soviets? Yeah, we were.
There were, and there were German soldiers who were surrendering, asking, "Can we go fight the Soviets with you now?"
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's
Frankly,
that
we
scene.
probably, though I will admit that I think we did mismanage that war.
Oh yeah,
We should have
absolutely.
we should have focused on Japan entirely, fortified the hell out of Great Britain, let the Germans and the Russians grind each other down to dust, and then gone in to pick up the pieces after Japan surrendered.
But then we would have to deal with the Italian Navy, Pete.
The what?
Well,
Yeah,
it's for the same reason. Like, okay, so let's
all
pretend,
4 boats.
if I can put my hairy turtle dove hat on, let's pretend that Hitler is not a Jew-hating megalomaniac. He's a genuine statesman. All he has to do
That's
is
getting
make
clipped
nice.
by your haters.
All he has to do is make nice with Britain, and then sit back, fortify his border, and wait, because Stalin guaranteed is going to come try to take the rest of Europe no matter what. And then all of a sudden, Germany is part of the Allied effort to keep Russia out, right? Like if he had been a genuine statesman instead of who he actually was, things might have been very, very different.
Speaking of Hitler, I maintain that, and I know Hitler was technically Austrian. Stop pretending it matters. I maintain that Germany has not been punished enough for its historical crimes against humanity.
Well,
For all the German philosophies, Marxism, like even the genesis of what we consider like wokery and social justice, that can be traced back to German folk romanticism in the late 19th century. What was his name? I can't remember the guy's name. I'm blanking out here, but a famous American writer and scholar went over and studied under some German philosophers about German nationalism and brought that back here.
Jackson Hinkle. What?
No. W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh,
you were
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, really? He studied with the Germans? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He went to the University of Berlin, I believe.
Wow, I did not know that. Huh? Okay.
Became enamored with a form of German, like folk nationalism, and he incorporated that, and we still see echoes of that in the modern, like in modern racial politics in America. All of this gets traced back to the fact that we let Germany exist as a country after World War II is just bizarre to me. I mean, yeah, we divided it in half, but they still called it Germany. Like how many world wars are you going to let the Germans start?
Dude, it's always the Germans. It's always fuck the world wars. Everything that fucks up in Europe is 90% of the time it's the Germans.
Before that, right?
Germans are up to something.
At some point, way back when, the Catholic Church says witches aren't real. Stop burning people saying they're witches. The Germans were like 9.
Yeah,
and they
that was Charlemagne in the 800s.
Yeah.
And then
you can actually find the laws.
Go ahead, Pete.
You can actually find the laws that Charlemagne wrote for Saxony, and one of them is, if you burn someone as a witch, we will hang you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because believing in witches is superstition. So, and that goes against the Christian faith. Meanwhile, if you look at a map of where all the witch burnings happened throughout the entire 2,000-year history of Europe, you get some yellows, some greens, some blues, and then red is Germany with like over a 1,000 more than the next highest country.
Even more than Scotland? Because I know Scotland burned hundreds.
Yeah,
really.
Bush League compared to Germany.
Wow.
Something in the Danube makes you angry.
Well, I mean, they're in Germany. How,
I guess technically I'm half German or part German. My grandmother, her family, she was first generation born here, was raised speaking German in the household. Still had fairly German sensibilities when I knew her before she died in '92. It's a shame because a certain aspect of German culture is very admirable because it's very work ethic focused. Like you will work your ass to the bone. You will work. The drag is it got reined to some, at least in the 20th century especially, it got reined to some just god awful ideas about, we're going to unite all of Europe under this Aryan perfection, and we're going to purify. And well, it's kind of getting back to the idea that you mentioned earlier that, yes, we're going to rediscover the ancient perfect race, and we're going to uplift ourselves once more. And then you end up with this catastrophically stupid. I mean, really, breaking the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was the dumbest possible thing for Germany to do. But they went ahead and did it, and it basically guaranteed their destruction.
But they had so many PhDs.
It was the second biggest strategic blunder of the war.
What do you say was the first? What do you think?
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, come on, Pete. An
But
oil
Roosevelt made them
embargo
do
is
it,
an
Pete.
act of war. Bombing a naval base is not. All right.
An oil embargo in response to massacres in mainland China is apparently an unprovoked act of war.
Yeah.
I should, just for the sake of being nice, but I spent 6 months in Germany when I was in the Air Force. I had a great time there. The modern Germans are mostly nice people, but your country has not suffered enough for the thing with the human race.
So, I mean,
Lest anyone think we're letting the communists off the hook, there is a substantial amount of evidence that Hitler was encouraged to start shit by Stalin.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Because Stalin was hoping to do basically the reverse of what I was talking about. He was hoping to get Hitler to wear himself out, beating down all of Western Europe, and then Stalin would sweep in afterwards.
And take it all, right?
And take it all
Right. Right. Hey, this is somewhat tangential. I apologize. Did any of you see The Death of Stalin, the dark
Yes.
comedy?
I love that movie.
Was it good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
It looks like it's really good. Like, it looks super duper bleak and dark, but really
It's
well done at the same
like
time.
historically speaking, like it gets the gist of it, but it's obviously it's designed to tell a story rather than follow history beat by beat.
Okay.
But it really approaches the institution of the Communist Party the way that we think of institutions, where they're all just a bunch of fucking idiots who are all self-absorbed and self-interested, and everything is a mad dash comedy of errors, shuffle for power once a vacuum hits.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I keep meaning to watch that, and I still haven't. I should make time to watch
And it
that.
was probably, all of that was probably just amplified 100-fold when you had an honest to God murderous psychopath like Joseph Stalin in charge.
Yeah.
He was genuine. He was the most cold, probably one of history's most cold-blooded killers.
Well, and he attracted those same kind of people to him. Like, there's the famous photo of the disappeared man walking along the river.
Yep.
Yezhov was his name. So Yezhov was one of the NKVD guys who was himself directly responsible for, it's estimated, like about 1 million murders, like state murders, where they murdered people. Just fuck you, you're dead, you're a enemy of the state now, congratulations. And then he himself was murdered by the state in his very own murder dungeon that he built, that was like for the purpose. Like, it had I'm trying to remember the description, but it was basically set up so they could hose it down easily and quickly clean it of gore and brain matter and blood.
I never thought the leopards would eat my face.
Exactly.
And the
Correct.
same thing happened to his successor, Yagoda.
Oh, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting little tidbit about the actual death of Stalin, not necessarily brought up in the movie, but Beria was probably next on the chopping block. And Beria, it went Yezhov, Yagoda, Beria. Beria was reaching the end of his usefulness, and he was probably going to be the next one on the chopping block.
And
Beria also known to carry a blackjack in his pocket everywhere. And it's entirely possible that the mechanism of Stalin's death could be induced by a sharp blow to the head with a blackjack
So
And Barry was the
killed
last one to see him alive.
Interesting.
Yeah, but look, man,
Uh.
any competent doctor could tell the difference between a stroke and a blackjack.
Oh,
Oh
wait.
wait, they didn't have any competent doctors. Oh, shit.
Because they killed
Turns
them
out they
all.
killed them all.
Well,
And the
if
fact
that's-
that they made that a plot point in the movie was.
Yeah.
I was actually. I still haven't seen the whole thing, but just with the parts I've seen, I was shocked that. Wait a minute, Hollywood made this.
So it's
Well, that's
based off
like,
of a bande dessinée comic book, which a lot of like really good Hollywood movies are based off of these Franco-Belgian comic books. They just don't get, marketed as adapted from this graphic novel or whatever. Like A History of Violence was based off of one of these, and so which like they didn't really divert too much from the original story of the comic book. It's just the French just being like, hey, how can we be cheeky about this? And so they turn basically the most murderous regime into a bunch of, PTA Karens, but they still keep all the murder and that shit in there. And they do hit on a lot of these historical facts that nobody is really cognizant of.
Interesting. Okay, I'm
And-
totally gonna have to watch that.
And
Then.
yet somehow there's probably more than a little bit of truth in that too. Just human nature being what it is.
Yeah.
The
All right.
no, that's just how mundane evil can be. It just
The
becomes
banality.
routine.
The term to come out of the Nuremberg trials was the banality of evil.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Well, speaking of Hollywood being shocked that they made a movie, it's not a movie, but one of my favorite series that's been done recently was Chernobyl, right? Because they didn't pull any punches with that. I was shocked that they actually accurately portrayed the Soviet dysfunction fairly realistically. They didn't pull any punches. I was
Well,
like, how did this
I
get
think
made?
I think they were able to sell that by saying like, "Hey, this is an anti-nuclear
Yes,
series," and
Yes,
then they just threw that stuff in there.
I think
Also-
you're right.
Yeah.
Also, is politically in vogue, not like Russia now. So
Yeah.
Right. You're
But
right.
that also plays in Ukraine, Mike.
As Ian pointed out, the parallels with Robespierre. Lenin considered the Bolsheviks to be the ideological descendants of the French Revolution. That's why I say it's like communism is only one of the latest iterations of this same reoccurrent problem.
So really, the French are to blame.
Yes, but
Yes.
so the French Revolution. What's hilarious is yes, it is the precursor of the Communist Revolution, and the Marxism took a lot of the French Revolution mentalities and philosophies and tried to apply it to the rest of Europe. French Revolution took its inspiration from the no shit Illuminati. So as much as like I joke a lot when I blame everything on the Illuminati, but there is like kind of a hint of truth because it was a real thing and it was just like this shitty social group that was trying to like uh, undermine the Catholic Church and like sneak into the Masons and figure out what the fuck they were doing in their lodges and that shit. So if you want to talk about like a comedy of errors that just ended up with murders, it starts there in the original Bavarian Illuminati too. Which there was a comment here by Croak, which it's very fitting, Brad. This is the best 3-word description of the deaths of Stalin you can get, which is it's curb your communism.
Oh, for curb your enthusiasm, is that what he's referring to?
Yeah.
But it's just curb your communism. Okay.
Oh yeah, you could absolutely hear that the credit song playing at
Oh.
any given scene in that movie.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was fascinated with Chernobyl. I watched and rewatched that over and over. Just being one, I thought it was a grippingly done story. Like from a standpoint of storytelling, it was well done. I liked that it was based on a true historical event that, as a kid, I was only vaguely aware of because of the news. Right? It was like, oh yeah, Chernobyl, nuclear, scary. Oh yeah, that's 3 Mile Island, whatever. And then it was over, and then life went on. All the remediation they had to do after the fact, I never even paid attention to as a kid or even as a young adult. And I was very appreciative of how they went into detail about basically the cleanup effort the hundreds of thousands of people mobilized for the cleanup effort, and some of the atrocious stuff that they had to do, like killing all the animals, right? They went through and they had to waste all the pets. How would you like to be on that detail? What a horrible thing to have to do.
We'll just call the ATF.
Look, it's a dog.
Yeah.
Oh, you only wounded it. Okay, we'll just laugh at it for a while, and
Wow.
it'll die eventually.
Wow, Brad.
That was surprisingly dark for Brad.
Or, you could be an old, crippled Utah guy, and the FBI will just come and shoot you at 6 a.m. because you're bad.
Yeah. The Atomic Task Force. Yeah.
Sounds like a superhero team name.
It's even more successful than the Marvels.
So, did
That's
any of you
not a
guys
high bar
actually?
too.
Did any of you guys actually see? I think I've only seen one post Endgame Marvels movie, and it was one of the Spider-Mans.
I didn't even see Endgame, dude. I thought Infinity War sucked, and everybody else is like, "No, that was even better than Endgame. That was like the peak of the Avengers and all that stuff." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Their final battle is the Gungan battle from Episode 1, except the Gungans actually had better tactics.
I saw Infinity War, and yeah, I think I watched a bootleg copy of Infinity or Endgame, and yeah, they just undid everything with time travel. Just like it's like that's
It's a cop out, right? It's the
I
ultimate
saw
cop out.
Endgame to wrap things up, and it was bad.
But it was like 3 hours of bad too.
It just killed me
Yeah.
though. It just killed me though that they had the super advanced futuristic Wakandans had laser spears and robot battle rhinos, and everybody was okay with that. Like,
Look, man, you don't want to be offensive by giving the black people guns in a movie, all right? You got to give them tribal spears and rhino cavalry. That's way less offensive.
To me, that was lame because the whole Wakanda thing got shoehorned into the MCU right at the end.
Yeah.
And then they made it like central to the ending of and I was like, okay.
So many things they crammed in the end that were, we were here the whole time.
Yeah,
for
right.
some reason. Like,
and it's really, I mean, the one thing they did get right is it pretty much is Tony Stark's arc, right? It begins with him and it ends with him. I thought that was appropriate. And I did like that they kind of gave him the final moment where, he snaps his finger, says, "I'm Iron Man," and he dies. I did like that part.
Holy shit.
What's that?
Spoilers. I told you I haven't seen the movie.
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry. So, I mean, that part is worth it. Like they do let Tony Stark have the full completion of his arc, which they're playing with throughout the whole thing. I myself, like, there were a lot of bad MCU entries that I just didn't like from a storytelling standpoint. I hate to say it. I thought all the Iron Mans except the first one sucked. I was not a fan of the Iron Mans. I thought those were badly done.
I don't think that's fighting words for anybody on this stream.
I did like. I seem to remember liking the first Avengers. I thought the independent Thor movies were pretty forgettable. I'll be honest. The ones that I enjoyed the most were the ones that had some of the best humor, and that was the Ant-Man movie. I did not think I would like that at all. And I'm in Kuwait killing some time one night, and I thought, fuck it, I'll just download it. And I downloaded it, and I watched it, and I laughed my butt off.
So that's why you liked it. All the shitty movies that I have turned into guilty pleasures are ones I saw in a shitty country. This is the only thing we could get,
Maybe that's the secret.
Notice Mike doesn't say anything about that because one of his hobbies, aside from internet zoology, is shitty movies.
Grew up on it.
Riff Tracks makes everything better. So
that's why people ask. I've seen like these Twitter challenges, like, "What's the worst movie you've ever seen?" Like, that's a.
Well, they always say the
Megaforce has got to be in the top 5.
Oh no, not even.
Have you seen Birdemic?
Have you seen Roller Gator?
No. No, I have not.
Suburban Sasquatch. Like, these are things that barely qualify as movies.
Sure.
Right?
Right, sure. Well, there was a lot of that on. I'm dating myself with this, but I'm old enough to have been around for Rhonda Shear and USA Up All Night.
I remember
Uh,
that.
that was bad movie heaven.
And
Her and Gilbert Gottfried would trade back and forth.
Didn't Gilbert Gottfried host that after?
Yes, he did. He was the alternate host, so it was either her or Gilbert Gottfried, and it was always some horribly bad, not even a B movie. It was like a C movie. Usually, it was super low budget, a lot of TNA, which is the only reason I watched it. Right, so.
That was what the USA Network existed.
Yes, yeah, USA Up All Night. That was bad movie heaven.
I mean, this is the network that had the show Silk Stockings.
Oh, I remember that show. Oh man!
So,
You're taking me
Brad,
back on that one.
here's a trick next time you go on Twitter and think about arguing with all these idiots: is read every tweet in Gilbert Gottfried's voice,
Oh yeah, right.
and it will shine a light at how retarded it is and how ridiculous their talking points are.
Sure. That's not a bad idea.
You betrayed me during Sad Puppies.
Like his turn he did in Beverly Hills Cop 2. Yeah, right. I can hear it. I can hear it now. Good idea.
We backed the wrong side in World War II.
It's one of my favorite tweets that I actually screenshot and uses a meme now is just Gilbert Gottfried voice, the Libertarians.
Didn't Godfrey die recently?
Yes.
Like cancer or something? Yeah, I thought
Apparently,
I saw that.
apparently he actually had a normal voice, and that the voice he was famous for was just something he did for TV.
He
Like,
affected
I didn't know
it.
that.
Oh wow.
I thought
Okay.
he just sounded like that.
Okay, I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense because I can't imagine anybody actually being like that all the time.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't he married? Imagine.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Oh no. Yeah. No, his poor wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did love the bit where there was like a short video where they had him reading from 50 Shades of Grey. It was-
In that voice too. Oh, that would be funny.
Well,
Just imagining his wife having one of those squeaky voices that is
Or,
just
yeah,
like
I want to
Ben
imagine
Shapiro?
like, his wife just put on like the stereotypical like angry Jewish woman voice whenever like they would talk to each other. So Gilbert Gottfried and her are arguing, and she's like you didn't put the dishes back the right way, Gilbert.
Let's see. Cannibal Women of the Avocado Jungle of Death. I saw that movie on like USA when I was a kid. It stars a young Bill Maher who even
Oh really?
Yes.
Oh.
He was even unfunny back then. It was like
Oh,
the
gosh.
80s. Yeah.
Yeah, USA Up All Night had some real winners. I remember that very, very, very well. It's funny. That was back when I even just watched TV as a rule. Like, I never watch TV anymore, honestly. The only time I'm watching any TV, it's not even real TV. It's just,
That's all right. TV's not worth watching anymore. I mean,
right? Like, I can't remember the last time I sat down and just watched a show that was like, oh, yeah, the show's on. Let's watch the show.
Like a lot of people of, I guess, my generation, I kind of became like a news junkie after 9/11 because people just had news on all the time.
Right.
Well, in
For me, it was the first Gulf War. The first Gulf War did that.
in
Like, I was watching
2004,
CNN.
I went overseas to Qatar for a year, and I didn't live on base or anything. I lived in town, and we had a TV, and there was satellite, but like none of the channels were in English. They were all like in Arabic, and they were European channels. There was nothing to. I remember watching. I was sitting there watching a Gundam episode dubbed into Italian. Like it kind of, you know.
you're the new type, and you're the chosen one.
And that was what they had on TV in Doha.
Yeah, I saw that once, but a lot of it was European and like Arabic TV stations.
Oh, wow.
So I just got out of the habit of watching television, and I never picked it up again.
Right.
That's what we need. We don't need anime dubs into like local languages, just local accents.
Well, that's one thing I learned. I'm not really a fan of. Like when I was a teenager, I thought I was an anime guy, but then like fast forward 15 years, and I'm like not even
Yeah.
close.
Why? Because you watched Robotech? Is
Correct.
you
Correct.
thought you were an anime guy because you
You're
saw
damn
the
right.
one thing that Suncoast fucking had on their shelf?
I watched Robotech and loved it, and I saw Akira and
Well,
had it
what?
on VHS.
You
Right?
didn't like Robotech. You liked Top Gun, and Robotech was like the closest thing to having that for like 30 episodes.
Maybe.
What you thought anime was all like robot fighter jets and fighting aliens? No, it's 90% high schoolers wearing sailor
Apparently.
uniforms for some reason.
Apparently,
Do
yeah.
schools in Japan even actually look like that, or is that just how they're portrayed in anime? Nobody knows.
And then I tried to watch Evangelion, and I was just like,
Mike
I
keeps
think
trying to get me to watch
I
that.
think I'm way
We're
too
going
old.
to.
For
We're
this.
going to stream it too.
I was like, I think I'm way too old for this. I just, the world is supposed to be saved by angsty teenage
The
boy.
man who made it was too old for it.
Well, that's what you said, right? You and I have had, right? We had a separate conversation. I remember. Yeah, you said he was basically working out his teenage depression.
He was working out his crippling depression in the form of a depressing anime, and yeah, it's. I want to make Coop watch it and stream it just because I enjoy making him suffer. Look at him, this fucking handsome smug
Yeah,
guy.
I'm not going to be involved in that one.
Yeah.
He,
Hey, Pete, can I join you in not being involved in that?
Irish. He's already suffered enough in life, you know.
I actually tried watching Robotech probably in my early 20s. And the squeaky voices and teenagers, I don't think I made it through a full episode. It's like, nope, I'm going back to Babylon 5.
Yeah, that was my wife too. So for the audience, my wife is actually 11 and a half years older than I am. So when we got married, I was 19, and that first year we were married, she was like, okay, I'm going to give this Robotech thing a try because you're so gung-ho for it. She got a few episodes in, and she was like, I cannot stand this shit. I can't do it. She was so annoyed, and I get it, right? Like, I get it. Like, I think Robotech is one of those things, if it doesn't hook you when you're like a 12-year-old, it's not going to hook you. You either love it then and you love it forever, or you're never going to love it. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I get it. She had a similar reaction when I tried to, so I was big into the Palladium role-playing game system way back. And she's like, okay, let's see what this game is that you like to play. So we did a character for her, and we spent a lot of time doing this really detailed character. And I start, as the game master, as we used to say, putting her through the thing. And about 20 minutes in, she was like, this game's just all fighting. That's all this is, right? Like, we can't just go around and explore the world and talk to people. And I was like, why would you want to do that? It's about blowing shit up, She's like, I don't want to play anymore. I'm done. No, not playing anymore. I'm out. Yeah, it was. And I was like, okay, here again is something. You either loved it when you were like 12 and you still love it for forever, or it's just, you're like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. I remember laughing so hard at, you guys may or may not be familiar with it's called Regular Show. It was on for a few years on Cartoon Network.
Heard of it, never saw it.
Regular Show was hilarious. It did a good job doing adult humor and kid humor. And we watched it. But one of the episodes pokes fun at role-playing games in a very clever, very on-point way that I found deeply amusing. And it reminded me of that incident with my wife and I. Because I was like, oh, yeah, if this doesn't get you like when you're young and you just become obsessed with it, you're just like, fuck it, no, not my bag. I don't care. This is stupid. I'm not going to play.
Basically, you have to be groomed into RPG.
Yeah, you kind of do. No, you kind of do. You kind of do. And yeah, and you learn, as I learned to my chagrin, there are definite levels of seriousness to your RPGing. Sometimes when I'm at the cons, I feel way out of my element because there are people at the cons that are so into it, especially the LARPers, right? Like the LARPers, that's a whole other level that I never ever as a teenager ever went to. And I'm just like, wow, like that's probably about as hardcore as you can get with this stuff. And for me, it was just my buddies and me and a bunch of pieces of paper and our imaginations and some dice and fucking around on a Friday evening. And and we never took it to the next level like some people have taken it.
Brad, it's okay. Like I never, as an actual occasional science fiction writer, I am like the least. I'm like one of the. I don't even have much nerd cred. I've never played a tabletop war game. I've never played a pen and paper role playing game.
Sure.
Well, I don't watch. I mean, I've seen quite a bit of anime, but I'm not really into it. And not because the stories and the settings or anything. I love the elaborate world building they'll do for no reason. Like they do a lot of deep world building that has almost nothing to do with the story. And I respect that. It's all the things that make anime I find annoying.
Yep.
You know?
Brad,
The giant saucer-sized eyes.
Brad, when I was in high school, we had a VOTEC, program, and one of them was animation. So I did that
Really?
for all through high school.
Did you really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
and that's why I learned to hate anime.
Oh.
Because I'm legitimately like fascinated with animation and really into animation, and I was surrounded by weebs the entire time.
Sure.
So it's like,
Right.
it's like, oh,
Right.
and now anime is like this huge thing, and it's taking over, because Western animation sucks and all that.
Sure.
And so everybody's turning to anime. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not following you down that road. I would rather just the whole industry just collapse than go over to anime.
Well,
Do you remember? Gosh,
I told Mike.
I was getting that though, is I was like, I don't have like I was never like one of the. I wasn't one of the nerd kids when I was a kid. I was just more of like a kind of a loser. Thing like I wasn't in German club. I wasn't in the band. I didn't get good grades. I got average grades, right? So
You just had your flannel and your jean jacket, and you were getting into fights with the principal.
I never had a flannel.
Mike's over here. It's like my Judd Nelson days are behind me. Okay.
But it's funny because I'm an actual science fiction writer and I have like very few nerd hobbies anymore. Like honestly, between you and me and the audience, I barely read anymore. I don't even remember the last book I read just for fun. Writing books has almost killed my love of reading.
Same here.
And
Same
it's
here.
not because I'm like, oh, I could do this better or whatever. It's just I get like distracted by this because I start thinking like, if I were going to tell this story, what would I be doing differently? How would I? And then it pulls me out of the narrative because I start thinking about the nuts and bolts of how I would do it. And yeah, I am just faking it I actually blew Brad's mind in a conversation about this one time, how I kind of accidentally stumbled into having
Yes, you did.
writing career.
You didn't work for it. You didn't struggle
I had to struggle
for years and years, you bastard.
It fell into my lap because I was in the right place at the right time. And seethe, I guess.
And I did. Oh,
And
you
you're
didn't
right.
have a million words of shit.
And the penguin is right. I am just faking it. Nothing I've written is actually true.
That's probably that's probably one of your best assets as a science fiction writer is that you're not this huge sci-fi fan that is going to like stick with all the tropes that you grew up loving, and you're just like, it's like, oh well, I have to have this because this is a key feature of what makes good sci-fi. You're just like, you know what? I have all these tools. I have all this clay. How do I mold it into something that's, kind of different and, interesting?
When I was a kid, I was a Star Trek fan when I was younger, and then I kind of grew out of it. I got to see how dumb Star Trek had become. This is like Next Generation era, right? We didn't know how dumb Star Trek had become back then. We had no clue. But then I found Babylon 5. I really like Babylon 5. It's a little cheesy now in retrospect, but TV was different back then. It wasn't as edgy as it is now, I guess.
Well, Babylon, the reboot of Babylon 5 was basically they latched onto this, basically the sci-fi retelling of Mormonism, but they
Battlestar Galactica.
Not Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
they took that and then tried to basically, it was all the writers that got basically thrown out from Voyager. And we're like, all right, how can we tell Voyager the way it was supposed to be told? Okay, we have this story of like this ship that's, on a long voyage by itself. Let's just grab onto that. And that's how they did it. And so, which it was basically.
They kept going on and on about a plan that apparently didn't actually exist.
Yeah.
It kills me too because like the first 2 seasons were really good. Like it was some of the best I thought at the time. Now, granted, I was still pretty brand new to the military myself, but I thought, wow, this is doing a good job being like a good military science fiction story. And then it just got weird after season 2. Everyone's a Cylon. It's Cylon of the week. Who's the Cylon now?
Well, because it started off kind of like, just spaceships with the 10,000, right? Like Xenophon,
Yeah.
Right. But I liked it because it was basically, aircraft carrier in space, but without the pop idol music that was a central point of Robotech. It's like you want to talk about not being able to get into Robotech and be like, oh yeah, no, you've got transforming Tomcats in space and they fight aliens. So like that sounds awesome. Why the fuck is half of every episode dedicated to this idol?
Min-May, yes, right.
Yeah.
Everyone hated Min-May. Everyone loathed Min-May with a passion, right?
Except for the makers, because it was like it's fucking 3/4 of the show.
I know, and the love triangle, right? It was the constant love triangle. You had the strong and steady Lisa Hayes, who was the stern Lieutenant Hayes on the bridge of the ship, and she's in love with Rick, and
she's just Charlie. She's just Charlie from Top Gun.
Okay, Weeds.
I barely remember seeing this show. I think I saw Robotech on
Toonami.
Yeah, but I read the novelizations of it when I was.
Oh, the Jack McKinney books. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think Jack McKinney even didn't like the character Min-May, to be honest.
If I remember, Jack McKinney was a pseudonym by several people. If I remember correctly, that was more than one person writing those. I remember those books. Yeah. And they tried to really take the concept seriously, like in a novel format. I didn't read more than 1 or 2 of them, but I was like, oh, okay, all right.
They were engrossing to my teenage mind. Not that my
sure.
I also read all the Wingman books by Mac Maloney. So
well, here's some way back for you that I still have. Some of the people watching might remember some of these. Remember these?
I still have both of those and
Did those come out in the 90s when Star Wars was dead?
No, these came out in the 70s. These were like 79, man. Yeah, the 90s shit about that what's-his-ass who was saying, oh, yeah, I saw on Google that Star Wars was basically dead in the 90s. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
So
Star Wars was 90s, bigger than ever in the 90s.
The 90s, which the same years that they were re-released in theaters. The same years that Decipher had one of the best card games out on the market, and Wizards of the Coast was shitting themselves because it was competing with Magic the Gathering.
Right.
The same years that Marvel and Dark Horse both had successful comic book runs. The years that the EU was just basically keeping the publishing industry afloat. And the year that every fucking video game that had a Star Wars name attached to it was raking in the dough.
X-Wing. TIE Fighter, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter,
Rogue Squadron, Shadows of the Empire, Jedi Outcast, Jedi Knight, Dark Force, all this stuff. You couldn't swing a cat and not hit Star Wars. You would just hit the Mormons, get kicked out of Utah. But
if you miss Star Wars, you get Mormon.
And then to cap it all off, 98 comes out, or was it 99? The Phantom Menace hits and breaks every box office record that Titanic was holding on to. It was basically the biggest release since like Gone with the fucking Wind.
Yeah.
Those 90s, that's when Star Wars was dead?
Right.
They mentioned Lucas owned a game studio. Yeah, LucasArts was huge in the 90s. Yep. They were like one of the pinnacles of gaming. And it
the Alan Dean Foster one was Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Just to answer the question. I think it was Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Sorry.
I still have that one too.
Go ahead.
LucasArts wasn't even all just Star Wars stuff. They put out a lot of good games back in the day.
Did they do the Wing Commander games? Who did Wing Commander?
No.
Mark Hamill was part of Wing Commander. That's why.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He played Colonel Blair in Wing Commander 3. Wing Commander 3 had a bunch of full motion video cutscenes in that era when that was late 90s.
Mark Hamill was in Wing Commander 3, 4, and Prophecy.
Yeah. Basically, Wing Commander. The reason that
yes,
besides Mark Hamill and space fighters, the reason everybody thinks it's part of Star Wars is because you have the Wookiee / Kazin, stand-in race. That's
Kilrabi.
yeah.
There's some. I've seen both that they were a Kazin ripoff and that they were basically a ripoff of whatever the cat aliens from Starfire were. The was a tabletop.
I mean, most of the space-based tabletop stuff was. Are you talking about Traveler?
No, this was a war game.
Yeah,
but
most of that stuff was based off.
David Weber wrote a bunch of books in the universe too.
Yeah, so like back before video games were like huge to the point they are now, a lot of the tabletop RPG and war games that took place in outer space, a lot of it was based off of like Larry Niven and the Ringworld stuff and the Man Kazin Wars and all that. Or it was Warhammer 40,000, which was based on fucking everything. Yep.
I still have to catch up on Man Kazin Wars. The number 10 is the latest one I have.
See, I just say I'm a Larry Niven fan, but really I just play Halo 1. Oh.
In theory, he still has a Ringworld TV show that is somewhere in development hell. I know I asked him, this has been a couple years, but I asked him if I could go in a certain direction with my next Man Kazin War story. And he said, no, you can't go there because it might infringe on what I'm trying to keep protected, siloed, basically, because the TV shows guys will get mad at me. But I, like everything else, I don't know if it's actually going to happen before he dies. Larry, unfortunately.
Looking at how like the television industry is right now, I kind of hope it stays in
right
development hell.
Because you know what they'll do with Ringworld? They will sideline the main character.
Yeah.
They'll make the Tila, the female character, the main character. She'll be perfect and beautiful and strong and courageous. And she'll make Louis Wu, the main guy, look like a stupid idiot. He, of course, will be written as a stupid idiot. She will be perfect and flawless, and she will, basically take over the show. That is exactly
Skywalker.
Correct. And it will piss me off to no end because that is not how the book is written, but that is exactly how Hollywood will write it. I'm convinced that's exactly how it'll go.
Because there's one thing television needs. It's one more sassy girl boss character. We don't have enough of that.
We don't have enough. We only have 8,000 of them. We need 8,001.
Look, I'm problematic because I'm still rooting for the Dalmatian puppies. So
that killed me. Oh my god, it killed me. In the they made that Corella.
Not like they killed Corella's mother.
Yeah, they made the Cruella de Vil movie. People don't know. If people aren't aware of this, they made a Cruella de Vil movie, live action. It only has a thin relationship to the 101 Dalmatians.
That's Glenn Close's movie, right? That's the Glenn Close movie.
No. This is the.
This is the recent one they made. They made her like an anti-hero instead.
Like they did with they did the same thing with Angelina Jolie and
but it's
Maleficent.
Set like in hip 1960s London, right?
Okay.
Except the reason she hates Dalmatians is because Dalmatians attacked and killed her mother. I'm not making this up. They actually made it so the Dalmatians had it coming.
See,
oh no. Did they really?
Yep.
Oh, that's
there's
terrible.
definitely a pattern in modern Hollywood, particularly like Disney, to openly side with the villain.
Yes.
To
Right.
a psychotic degree.
Well, isn't now I didn't see it. I didn't see Frozen, but isn't that kind of the plot of Frozen? Like the sister that brings eternal winter is actually kind of the bad guy, but she's the good guy. I didn't see it, so I could be wrong about that. But I thought that was what they did with Frozen, and people were like, "Ooh, this is edgy."
Yeah, they basically they make her into like some misunderstood outcast.
Oh, of
that
course,
just needs to be
right.
like saved from
Naturally.
herself rather
Okay.
than.
Okay, so the bad guy is just misunderstood. That's the lesson.
The real villain is the prince.
Well, the thing with, unfortunately, I have seen Maleficent and I detest it, but they
Why?
didn't just make the villain misunderstood. They made the good guys from the original movie into downright psychopathic villains.
Oh, see, now that's dirty pool. I deeply dislike when they do that.
Apparently retconned out the part from the original Sleeping Beauty movie where she invoked the powers of hell and turned herself into a fire-breathing dragon.
I'm just not down with it. I'm just not. I know I'm an old white guy, but I don't care. I'm just not down with it.
And again, if they wanted to tell a story like that, they could just create an original character and make it, but they won't do that.
Right?
Because
it's not about making something new. It's about changing your reality and repurposing your what we already have and your history and your traditions to.
But here's the thing, though: who is that really emotionally attached, or is really hinging their worldview?
I don't know, man. Who is such a big Snow White fan that they needed a live action remake? But we're getting it.
Right? It makes no sense.
Apparently, we're getting two of them.
Right, they're redoing the whole movie basically.
The actress said, "Well, the movie is like 80 years old." Yeah, exactly. Why are you remaking it? Just make a.
You know why? Why they're doing it is because they've sort of hit the limit on like the amount of leeway Congress will give them on copyright laws. So they have to make something new to keep that copyright in their wheelhouse.
I seem to remember there was a live action Snow White movie, like Snow White and the Huntsman or something like that.
Oh yeah, with what's her name, Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, didn't that happen? I didn't imagine that, did I?
I don't know. It came out at the same time as like that Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, because before there was like this, new girl boss shit. There was like, how can we make some edgy action version of like Grimm's fairy tales and shit like that?
Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters had Jeremy Renner in it too.
Yeah.
I remember I've seen that because I remember I had a little mini disc for it from my my Sony PSP.
Yeah. Dude, as much shit as we give those handheld things, those were a lifesaver on deployment.
As opposed to everyone crowded around somebody's laptop.
Yeah.
In the trash or whatever.
Yeah, because sometimes I just want to watch Old Boy for the 1,000th time by myself on my own rack.
I want to watch Secondhand Lions and not anybody.
What I was going to say is there was a Snow White
heartwarming movie, okay?
I've never seen it, to be honest. All I know is the memes. I've only ever seen the memes from.
Honest to God, Brad, you would actually really like Secondhand Lions, I think.
Okay. I mean, it's got a good cast. It looks like it's got a great cast.
It is a painfully wholesome movie.
Okay. You're probably right. I probably would feel it. I was thinking of Sigourney Weaver was the enemy in a Snow White. Oh, what was it called? This was like 20 years ago, I want to say, but I don't remember the name of the movie. But it was a live action. Sigourney Weaver plays the evil queen who's fearful.
Aliens.
Sam Neill was in it. Sam Neill was Snow White's father, who basically. I'll have to look it up anyway.
I don't even remember Snow White's father featuring in the original fairy tale. What are they doing?
I'm gonna quickly look that up. That's gonna bother me if I don't look it up. What was that movie called?
No, but I mean, like, which one?
Sam Neill scream in it, though. That's the important. Whoa!
Snow White, A Tale of Terror. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. I was just making a shitty joke. Go ahead.
It was Snow White, A Tale of Terror, 1997. Yeah.
Well,
the drinker has made that Sam Neill scream.
Well, he made similar screams in several movies too, though.
Yeah.
Because it's either from The Mouth of Madness or Event Horizon. Oddly enough, the one thing he doesn't scream in is fucking Jurassic Park.
What's your guys' opinion of Event Horizon? I always ask this for.
I like Event Horizon.
You do like it, okay?
Oh yeah, I wish they would have had to film the whole thing in zero gravity like they wanted to, but
I'm not like enamored with it the same. Like I'm not part of the cult fandom surrounding it, but it's like it's a perfectly serviceable movie. It's weird that it was made by the same guy who did Mortal Kombat.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah, it's
that.
Paul W. S.
Really?
Anderson.
Huh. Because I've got some friends who that is their favorite, not only their favorite science fiction movie, but their favorite horror movie too. Which, like, beyond even Alien or anything like that, they love Event Horizon with a passion.
I know some people that it really just struck their horror nerve. You know, it really.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Me, I was like, okay, but here's the thing about horror movies: is once you've seen them, they kind of lose some of their effect. The first time I saw The Grudge in like 2005, that movie scared the shit out of me. That movie gave me, I'm going to admit something, that movie gave me nightmares. I slept with the lights on for a month after that. That creaking sound of the dead Japanese ghost lady. Right?
They based The Ring off it. Didn't they base The Ring?
No. They're two separate things.
Okay.
They're both Japanese in the, like, they're both based off like either Japanese movies or Japanese novel.
I was walking, I was in a motel, and I was going down the stairs, and it had the fire door in the stairwell, and it had one of those pistons on it so it doesn't slam, and it made this creaking as it slowly closed. All the hair on my arms, the back of my neck stood up. Right, that movie bothered me for like months.
That's right.
But I watched it over and over again to the point now where it's just cheesy. So it's like, I think horror.
I mean, dude, people were legitimately like scared shitless from the original Resident Evil video game. It's like in like the worst graphics ever, but like that still scared the shit out of people.
And the worst voice acting ever.
Oh yeah.
The movie that still gets me is not even the original Alien. It's John Carpenter's 1982 The Thing. That had some of the most, for me, disturbing physical horror because it's practical effects. And then the concept of the monster to this day just makes me shudder because it doesn't just kill you or impregnate you and this thing explodes out of your chest. At least in that you die. In Carpenter's The Thing, the monster attaches itself to you and then you become the monster. And suddenly you're the monster. All your personality, all your memory, all of who you are is now possessed by the monster. And then you go around and do the same thing to other people. That was such a head fuck for me when I saw that movie as a kid. Like, I remember after seeing that movie, I laid awake like,
If you saw a dog that was a little too well behaved, you were
correct.
Just like, kill it.
Correct. It's like, that movie to this day, I have nightmares from that movie. It's so, for some reason, that was just like, yeah, Mike, I hear you. Like, there's that one movie that just gets you where you're like, yeah, that was the movie for me.
I think for me, the scariest horror movies for me have always been like ghost and demon themed horror movies. Like monster movies never really did it for me as much because it's like if you can kill it with fire or a shotgun or blow it up, it's more of a practical problem to be solved than it is
load shotgun with malicious intent.
Yeah.
Here's your exorcism.
Or the infamous 4-barrel shotgun from what was it? The Phantasm.
Oh yeah,
Phantasm. Speaking of bad late night movies, the movie Phantasm qualifies.
Yeah, the late 70s was a weird time. Okay,
I think for a solid week after seeing Phantasm, I was afraid to like wake up because there's that dream sequence where he wakes up and then the goblins like jump on him and that shit.
Yeah. The little people. Yeah.
I'm still afraid of them, but
as well you should be.
Like boarding up my house, Peter Dinklage, you'll never get me. As far as Event Horizon goes, I think it's perfectly serviceable, and it's like I'll say it's a good movie, but I'm not in love with it the way that a lot of people are.
What's really, I think I watched it with my wife. She's not a huge horror fan, but she's okay with ones that are like she'll watch them if they're not like too full of jump scares and not too grotesque. And she has a friend to watch it with, so we watched it. I think what really stood out to her the most was the pump techno soundtrack over the end credits that was just so out of place with the rest of the movie. It was.
Whereas like Blade at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
I've never cared for slasher movies.
No, not really. No, I don't like
Same
them
here.
at all.
Yeah.
I don't like.
For one thing, it's like that is
Friday the
definitely
13th.
one. That is definitely one you can solve with a shotgun.
I don't like the torture porn ones either. I
No,
don't like
those
the
either.
movies.
I like shit that's legitimately scary on like a metaphysical level. Like how they like, all right, that's why The Exorcist was one of the scariest movies ever made when it was originally made. You know, like we've escalated since then, but still it was, you can't beat this with strength. You can't beat this with weapons. You can't even beat this with knowledge because nobody knows what the fucking exorcism is except for like the weird priest over there. So it's like now it's a spiritual war and nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. So
But
My wife is a connoisseur of scary movies, so she likes to watch every new movie that comes out. Most of them, she says, suck. We did see one that was actually genuinely, like you said, kind of metaphysical. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was like I think it was called The Presence, and it had very little in the way of like practical horror. It wasn't a slasher movie. It wasn't blood and guts. It was much more of a concept horror movie that delved into what is evil really, and what makes people do evil things. Like, why would a good person do something evil? And it was The Presence. It was
money.
like we thought it was like, okay, like this is really is what Satan is. Like, if you believe in Satan as a genuine malignant person that can influence people's lives and make even good people do bad things, that movie kind of tried to show you what that would actually look like, and it was pretty well done. I was like, oh damn, that's really creepy, and my wife agreed. And again, she's a connoisseur, so she knows all the bad horror, and she's very discerning. So when something genuinely creeps her out, usually it's a pretty good creepy movie.
how do you feel about Dog Soldiers? That's still one of my favorite movies. I'm not afraid of anything in it, but
didn't see it.
It's a fun action movie, you know.
Didn't see it.
Yeah, it's more of an action movie than a horror movie.
I actually think they really underestimated how well the SAS guys could do against werewolves.
they're not even SAS. They're just you're talking about like in the beginning where they I just like how
anybody ever
the movie or the first quarter of the movie is like a straight up field op where they have BFAs on and they just hate life.
Yeah. The original House on Haunted Hill was Vincent Price.
Yeah, I watched it as a kid. There was one jump scare in there that got me as a kid. Right?
The Phantom chick with the
But
I don't think I ever
the
saw
riff
it.
tracks of that movie is hilarious.
I was say, the Riff Tracks Alive House on Haunted Hill special is one of the funniest fucking things you'll ever see in your life. Not in no small part because of the two shorts they show before that, where it's like they take like these 70s educational shorts and riff over them. One is about a witch that tries to make you buy generic brand stuff at the grocery store to save money because it's the 70s and the economy sucks. And the other is like a paper bag tries to like convince the kid that like the paper industry is like the last thing holding civilization together. And both are fucking hilarious. But the House on Haunted Hill itself, I can't watch that movie unless it's being riffed, just because it's so fucking funny the way they did it.
Well, the thing that is, I haven't seen the riff tracks. I've just seen the actual movie, and of course, it's Vincent Price chewing the scenery as only Vincent Price could. But the fact that they blended, it's like, okay, you know that he's up to something.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something else going on in the background that he's not in control of. And I thought that was pretty well done. Because I mean, this was a time when the writing had to stand up because the effects weren't there. Which you saw a lot on the Twilight Zone too.
Yeah.
Was that a Hammer horror film? Was that one of the Hammer movies?
I
never saw it.
I think it was before Hammer.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, guys, we are at 2.5 hours now, so
Yep.
I think we've sufficiently delved into the question. Actually, have we gotten a solid answer from Brad on why is he so terrible?
I've avoided it. I've completely
Brad,
avoided it.
answer the question.
Yes or no? What's your deal?
To destroy science fiction, to destroy it forever.
Science fiction is destroying itself. You don't have to
Yeah.
bother.
All right, on the YA.
I will. Well, good news. I think
It's been a pleasure, guys. I really
I'm going to
appreciate
have
being able to
I have
come
a
on.
theory. The reason Brad is so terrible is because he's bald.
You know,
Hey, it happens to the best of us, man.
Dr. Evil is bald. Brad is bald.
I was gonna say, going all the way back to James Bond, man. You know, Donald
Yeah.
Pleasance. It
I
was
actually-
established.
In a group chat I'm in with him, I have his profile picture is Donald Pleasance from Puma Man. So
Puma Man or Puma Man?
Puma Man. Not from James Bond. No. He gets him in Puma Man.
You got anything you want to plug, Brad?
Again, Chaplain's War always. I'll throw that out there. If anybody wants to read the hard science fiction, military science fiction, this won the Dragon Award, Star Wheel Sky. We talked about Mangan Wars earlier. I do have that novella that's in the latest one, which I hopefully will have some more coming out in the not too distant future. For the MHA fans that are watching, I did get a reach out that there might be another book coming, and I might be able to do a story in that. I do hope in the not too distant future again to be putting some more stuff into Analog magazine. Thanks to everybody that tuned in today, and hopefully we were amusing for all of you that have stayed up late on the East Coast. I myself have duty again tomorrow, unfortunately. So after we're done with this, I'm going to go to bed and sleep soundly. But it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me on, guys.
Happy to have you, brother.
Good night.
Good night, folks.